Hello, good morning. Welcome to The Big Issue. The Big Issue is live on 97.3 City FM. We're also live on Channel 1 television and also on all our socials. My name is Selorm Adonoo. This is a platform for incisive analysis and riveting conversation. We come your way every Saturday at 9 a.m. where we look at the topical issues that have dominated the news headlines in the week. We, this morning, have two key issues on our table. We're looking at justice delivery. The Bar Association, the New Patriotic Party, opposed the suspension of the Chief Justice. Indeed, the Bar Association has called for a revocation of the suspension of the Chief Justice because they say the act of the president was unconstitutional. Why was it unconstitutional? They say the president failed to follow Article 296, which deals with the regulation of discretionary power. Is a GBA right? Many others have proffered differing views. We will assess all of these views. Indeed, the Trade Unions Congress at May Day also cautioned or urged caution on the suspension and processes set in motion to remove the Chief Justice. They did not say it's unconstitutional, but they only sounded caution to the president and all people involved in the process. Their concern is that once this is done, it sets Ghana on a slippery path. We will look at all those concerns. While all of this is going on, the President, John Dramani Mahama, has nominated 7 more persons for the Supreme Court. 7 justices of appeal have been elevated or nominated for vetting to the Supreme Court. We will look at all of this amidst concerns of an upper ceiling of the Supreme Court. The previous government was criticized for what people called packing of the Supreme Court. We will look at that and see if this also amounts to a similar thing. On the second matter, the MPP at crossroads, the thank you tour, fallouts, withdrawals, and suspensions. And it does appear that the process is birthing new presidential hopefuls of the MPP. The former education minister, Yaweduchum, has hinted of his intention to contest the 2028 flag bearership elections. And also, of course, Kennedy Japan, we suspected would, but he also stated categorically this week that he will run. Does the NPP need this at this time? Shouldn't they be focusing on healing the party and getting the party in good shape so that whoever is elected as flag bearer will have a good party to run with and possibly win the presidency? We'll look at all of this later, this morning. And of course, the show is live and interactive. You can join us via our WhatsApp line 020-444-7033. And that is being displayed on your screen. Also, you can join us via 0549-986-996. We'll be happy to share your views with the rest of the world. My name is Selorm Adonoo. I'll take a short break. I'll return, provide some updates, introduce my guests, and then we'll get the discussion underway. You're welcome.
Where politics meets power, where the tough questions are asked, welcome to Face to Face. Every Tuesday at 9 p.m., join Umaru Sanda Amadou as he takes you face to face with the key players shaping the future of our nation.
I lost over $10 million at the trade fair.
You had a fight with the management of trade fair?
I don't have a fight with them. I just deplore the way they went about what they did.
Let's talk about the chief prosecutor of the state at the time that you were being prosecuted, Godfrey Yeboah-Dame, the Attorney General.
Yes. I think he was directed to jail us.
By who?
By the system.
Boko has been a failure for your government, though.
Can't be a failure.
You have not solved it.
No, you are not praising them, the previous government for solving Yendi, which was even a more difficult case.
It's quite obvious that from these votes, the people felt that let's just let you go.
So they were disappointed
in us.
You are essentially the worst government in the Fourth Republic.
I don't know how you are doing that. based on the indicators.
Yes, based on the number of people who refuse to
Turn
come
out
and
to
vote for
If
you.
that is your analysis, then why not?
No filter, no boundaries, just the truth behind the headlines. Deep, bold, and unflinching. Face to Face with Umaru Sanda Amadou airs on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. only on Channel 1 TV, where politics gets real.
In a world filled with challenges, we all need guidance, hope, and a lifeline to anchor us.
This is Lifeline, and I'm your host, Fred Crunchy Mensa.
From social issues, relationship challenges, and family matters, Lifeline is here to inspire, uplift, and guide you on your journey.
Where we give you support, where we hold your hand through the valley and through the thick and thins of life.
Join Bishop Fred Crunchy Mensa.
I welcome you especially to Lifeline.
Every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 p.m. right here on Channel 1 TV. Let's walk this path together, strengthen our faith, our families, and our lives. Lifeline, because every soul deserves a guiding light. Tune in to Lifeline on Channel 1 TV and let's grow together.
Welcome. It's Play to Aid.
Get ready for the game show where every play has a purpose. Welcome to Play to Aid, the only game show where your knowledge and skill don't just win you prizes, they help change lives.
What sport is considered the most popular in the world?
Every point you earn goes toward real-world support, from school supplies to health kits, clean water to emergency relief. Play smart, play big, play to aid. Catch all the action, the drama, and the heat.
Most commonly spoken language in Brazil.
Portuguese.
Play to Aid every Sunday at 3:30 p.m. only on Channel 1 TV.
Edna, let's begin.
The Play to Aid game show is proudly sponsored by Tang Palace, Giraffe Island, and VVIP.
Curious about what's happening beyond your borders? Beyond Borders takes you there. Every Wednesday at 7 p.m., join Caleb Kuda as he explores the stories that shape our world, connecting you with Ghanaians in other cultures and seeing the world through their eyes.
So we've learned one thing: you leave your shoes outside. Wow.
Tuesday,
yeah.
you know, I won't go to Ghana dressed in a Lacoste.
As director of operations.
From international politics to the human stories that define nations, Beyond Borders brings you a fresh perspective of Ghanaians around the world, one conversation at a time. Beyond Borders with Caleb Kuda airs Wednesdays at 7 p.m. only on Channel 1 TV.
You're welcome back. This is the big issue on 97.3 City FM. Two key issues we are looking at. The matter of the removal of the Chief Justice or suspension of the Chief Justice. A committee has been set up. That committee will start work soon to hear the Chief Justice to see if indeed she should be removed or not. She's been suspended nonetheless. The President, following Article 14610, exercised his prerogative to do the suspension. That suspension is come up for a lot of discussion. There are people who think that the President did what was right, followed the dictates of the Constitution and suspended the Lady Chief Justice. Others also think that it was unconstitutional because the President, according to them, failed to follow Article 296, which is the provision on discretionary power. We will look at that, and it's a major discussion. Indeed, the Ghana Bar Association, during its mid-year conference, raised those matters together with some other things. We will look at that specific matter and see if the GBA is actually speaking the law or they have gone off track as far as the law is concerned. Also, the New Patriotic Party on Monday, together with other parties, will be staging a demonstration against the suspension of the CJ. They say that the suspension is unlawful, it is improper, it is tainted with politics, and it does not paint a good picture for Ghana's the future of democracy. They think doing this will weaken the democracy, will weaken the judiciary, and that will not be a good thing. Still on the New Patriotic Party, that party appears to be at some crossroads. The thank you tour by their 2024 candidate, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, appears to be degenerating. A lot of accusations have come up on stage with party stalwarts like Kennedy Japan withdrawing from the tour, citing security concerns. Indeed, some students that we understand he organized to come and sing and make the place lively were engaged in some difficulty, and one of them was stabbed by another party member. He said because of that he didn't feel safe, his supporters do not feel safe, and he cannot continue to be on that tour. Earlier, there were other concerns about commentary made by some persons like Abronia DC when they went to Brekum, for which Kennedy Japan had to respond. It doesn't appear to be rosy. Boache Jack, also another stalwart of the party, is calling for a halt of the thank you tour, so they sit back, re-strategize, and then take it up again. But would they heed that advice, or they would just go ahead, finish it, and then continue with the reorganization of the party? What should be done? What should the New Patriotic Party do to endear itself once again to the people of Ghana, so that come 2028, the people of Ghana may give them a mandate? We will look at that this morning. Let me provide you some updates. The suspension of the Chief Justice, Gertrude Torkornoo, has continued to raise concerns among opposition parties. As calls grow louder for transparency, key political figures speaking from a unified platform ahead of Monday's planned protest are urging the government to uphold judicial independence. There is more in this report by Channel 1 News' Hansen Ajiman.
Minority Leader Alexander Panyumakin, serving as a guest speaker at a press briefing, questioned the decision taken by the Council of State and the Chief Justice's suspension. He described it as lacking transparency and appearing premeditated. He argued that the Council of State had failed to adequately safeguard judicial independence during the process.
The current attacks on the Chief Justice and the broader attempt to politicize the bench must be seen for what they are. And here, our Council of State failed our democracy. They rehearsed the suspension of the Chief Justice. They got a fake research done, threw it into the air. The majority of Ghanaians want the Chief Justice sacked.
Political parties in the protests were each given the opportunity to state their position. The New Patriotic Party voiced concerns over Justice Scott Pauman's role as chair of the investigative committee, citing a potential conflict of interest.
The appointment of Justice Pauman as a chair is inappropriate. Justice Pauman, having authored a Supreme Court ruling directly connecting to the petition against the Chief Justice, cannot be deemed to be an impartial adjudicator on this matter. His involvement erodes public interest.
The National Democratic Party, represented by its leader Al-Haji Frimpong Mohammed, called on the president to reverse their suspension, describing it as a threat to Ghana's democratic foundations.
The NDP calls on His Excellency President John Mahama to revoke the suspension of the Chief Justice with immediate effect. Given the imminent danger to our democracy from the NDC and President John Dramani Mahama, the National Democratic Party calls on all members to participate. To participate in the Save the Judicial demonstration on Monday.
All right, so that was a report by Hansen Ajiman. The NPP is organizing a demonstration together with some other political parties in protest of the suspension of the CJ. They think the process is not correct, it's not lawful, it's unconstitutional. It should not be happening. It's tainted with politics, and it does not. It doesn't portend good things for our democratic future. My guests this morning, Professor Sharif Khalid Mahmood, Economic Advisor, Office of the Vice President, Dr. John Osai-Kwapon, Political Scientist, CDD Research Fellow, Justice Abdullahi, Private Legal Practitioner, John Dakun, Member of Parliament for Swami and Counsel for the Minority Caucus, Andrew Apia Dankwa, Private Legal Practitioner, also a member of the Movement for Change. Franklin Kujo, President Imani Africa. These are my guests this morning. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the program.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Let me start off with Justice Abdullahi, Private Legal Practitioner. Justice, good morning. Welcome to the program. You're a member of the GBA.
Good morning.
Yes. The GBA earlier in the week, of course, from that mid-year conference, issued a communique or a resolution, as they will always do, and they took issue with the suspension of the CJ. They say it's unconstitutional, and they have called the president to revoke the suspension. Indeed, the president has the power under 146 to revoke that suspension. They are calling on the president to revoke the suspension. Have you looked at that resolution? Were you at that meeting? And what do you make of the resolution as it relates to the Chief Justice's suspension?
All right, thank you, Selorm. I appreciate the honor to be the first to speak on this matter, but it's unfortunate that GBA that you and I are members of. Indeed, it appears that my colleague panelist and my brother, John Darko, are all members of that association. Arguably the most recognized association in Ghana, and at least by way of our constitutional provisions. And so it's a very significant body that over the years had fought impunity and executive abuses, and indeed our political landscape has been shaped closely by the active and, if you like, proactive involvement of the GB over the years. And so growing up, this was a privileged association that we all wish to belong to. And then now we are members of it, and this is how the association gets run. It's unfortunate for me that, as far as I'm concerned, that such an enviable association has, of course, has always been political. It has played when everybody else was unable to talk. It had a voice, a stronger voice. It was one of the probably most respected associations in Ghana. Until recently, that almost everyone attempts to denigrate the association because, obviously, for the wrong reasons, and we brought it to ourselves. I think we can do better. But going into the substantive issue, whether I confess that I wasn't part of the 47 that voted for the resolution. That I can confidently say with certainty, all the level of certainty. I wasn't part of it. I wasn't part of it at all. Having said that, I completely disagree with the resolution. I completely disagree with literally every single letter in the resolution that was passed. I may be bound because it's a collective decision, and so I may be bound by the content of it, but I would never, under any circumstances, advance any argument in his favor or even attempt to even subscribe to the resolution because it is completely wrong. The arguments being churned out are wrong. I do not find any merit in the arguments being made by the association, whether in law. And so for me, it's much ado about nothing, because it has no bearing on the decisions that have been made, either by the Council of State or by the executive. And so I think it can easily be ignored as one of those vertebrate of an association that has outlived its usefulness, unfortunately, because considering the circumstances of our given period. I think we can revolve and do better as an association and make ourselves more relevant to the body politics of Ghana. As time evolves, I expect that we evolve. And I strongly would recommend that we do have a better introspection as an association and then see how better we can dance with the new tune in town rather than always ridiculing ourselves in public. I'm very saddened that we churn out this position and we don't even provide any legal basis for calling out the president and indeed for pointing out whether, this is an association of lawyers. So if you say that the president got it wrong, we should be able to provide legal basis for which we argue that out. And there must be a substantive basis for making these kinds of arguments and not theoretical and arguments that you probably would want to see it as more political in nature than legal. We are not politicians, at least per the tenets of the association, but we have a voice as a civil society to contribute to matters. So when we are contributing, I expect that we do provide legal basis for it so that we don't sound as though we are another association of market women making arguments, uninformed arguments over issues. I think that we could do better. Really, like I said, I am in complete support of and in agreement with the position of the president and the Council of State. And these are my reasons. And you remember 2 weeks ago, we were on this same show where we pointed out all the legal structures that ought to be followed. And we all came to that same conclusion that from the moment the petition was sent to the president, outlining the basis for the removal of the Chief Justice, so long as, and once the decision is made, the president has a lot of discretionary powers from that moment when he receives the petition. And this discretionary power is not regulated by any law. It's purely discretion in the sense of the word. It is the president that determines what happens after the petition is received. And the constitutional provisions only require him to inform the Council of State of the receipt of the petition for the removal of CJ. Once the Council of State receives it, of course, together with the president, we made this argument, and and it still stands correct, that they then make a determination as to whether or not there's a prima facie case against the Chief Justice. This does not involve the input of the Chief Justice. However, as we all pointed out, as part of the overarching benevolence of the president, he still gave the Chief Justice the right to respond to this petition even before the prima facie case is made. Now, unless you are not a lawyer or you do not understand the tenet of the Constitution, I do not see how any of this up to this point can be argued as flawed. Now, having said this, and all these are clearly in line with the Constitution. Having said that, if you moving on from there, when the president gave the Chief Justice the opportunity to respond, and having responded, mind you, the response of the CJ is not ordinarily supposed to form part of the basis for the determination whether or not a prima facie case has been made. However, in this particular case, considering that these advances were made by the CJ and was accepted by the president, clearly it means that Council of State and the president took into consideration the responses of the CJ and came to that determination that indeed prima facie case has been made. Now, from this, and I'm outlining the constitutional procedure right from the beginning to the end, so that we all can judge whether this is spelled out. What I'm saying is as spelled out in the Constitution, and if there's any part of it that is wrong, we should all point it out that indeed this part of the Constitution does not support the basis of your argument, or a particular part has been wrongly misinterpreted in favor or against the issues. Now, everything I've said so far is exactly what the president and indeed the Council of State have done. Now, having achieved the prima facie issue that indeed the CJ has a question to answer. Remember, the argument whether this ought to be a regulated discretionary power or not, for me, does not come in at all. We all admit that indeed the entire procedure as couched under the Constitution can be looked at, because we all agree that indeed it is a weaker means of removing a person in the office of the CG, because I think, and I've made this strong recommendation, that we ought to streamline the procedures well. We ought to provide regulations to guide any future removal processes, rather than putting ourselves in this back and forth argument as to whether things have been done right or wrong. And then also to remove ourselves from relying on discretionary powers of the actors and individuals involved in the entire removal process. This argument has been accepted, and so we cannot even go beyond that. But having accepted it does not necessarily mean that there is a breach of the Constitution, because that is what the Constitution provides for. The Constitution provides for the Council of State, together with the President, making a determination as to whether the CG has a question to answer. That is what we lawyers call prima facie case. That's as simple as that. Whether you want to argue this part, you want to regulate this aspect of the law or not, it's a future decision, but can never be a today's decision that should that can be a basis for anyone questioning the decision as made. It is argued, and it is indeed accepted, that we can look at this angle again. But does that in itself denigrate and indeed question the argument? In fact, the decision has made. Does it take anything out of it? Absolutely not. Does it make it unconstitutional? I disagree. That you argue that it makes it unconstitutional. It does not in any way make it unconstitutional. Now, moving on from there, comes in the issue that the Constitution doesn't provide which comes first, whether it's the egg that gave birth, that gave birth to the chicken, or the chicken that gave birth to the egg. Issue comes in here. That is whether the president, the exercise by the president for appointing the members of the committee, first of all, and then second, whether or not the president suspends the CJ. These two are provided for right after the prima facie case has been established. But the Constitution does not provide for which one takes effect first. And so my argument has always been that the two come simultaneously, because the Constitution doesn't provide as to which comes first or which comes last. And the two come simultaneously, first of all, because the president exercises a discretionary power as to whether he wants, based on the circumstances of a given case, the CJ suspended or not. It is not mandatory that the president actually suspends the CJ when the committee is set up for the to go into the matters. It is not a mandatory requirement. It is a discretionary requirement. Power vested in the president to determine whether he would want the CJ suspended. That is purely an issue that you cannot regulate, because it is both political and legal. It is political because the president is the one authorized to exercise that power first, and so when it comes to political decisions, the authorities are bound that it is difficult to exercise, regulate that. In fact, it is advisable not to even regulate it, because it is a decision that a person sitting at the office of the president, having taken into consideration several circumstances, would have to make. If you want to regulate that decision, it becomes as though the regulator is the one making that decision for and on behalf of the president, because what the person sees is different from what all of us see. That is why political questions are, over the years, over the period, has been a place where the law attempts not to regulate. But this is where we have all these political doctrine questions coming from. And so it is a deliberate decision by jurists that when it comes to political questions, let's leave it to the authorities that have the right to do so. And in our jurisprudence, we have a lot of authorities in support of this argument. Now, moving on from there to the issue of the legal bit of the suspension, comes in whether or not, based on any decision that the president wants to make at the point where he's deciding whether to suspend or not to suspend, whether the CJ can influence the outcome. Remember, two of the persons sitting on the matter are coming from the office occupied by the CJ, i.e. two Supreme Court judges. These are people who, even though may be equal to the CJ, but still serve under him. And so there can be some level of influence, there can be some level of interference by the CJ. And so one sitting on a matter such as this has this decision to make, whether leaving the CJ to remain in office can potentially affect the outcome of the investigations that are ongoing. Remember, when he's sitting as a CJ, when he's a CJ, he has huge powers. But when he's out of office, those powers are limited. Some of the favors he can call for, he may not necessarily have those favors. I mean, those discretions or the same line of favors that he can call on for all kinds of support. But when he's in office, he can call for favors. He can do all kinds of things that may potentially affect the investigations and the outcome. And so it is an individual's choice in looking at the entire circumstances, whether he would want to leave the CJ to remain in office while the investigation goes on or otherwise. That choice is not conferred on you, neither is it conferred on myself. It's not conferred on anyone other than the president. If you want to question why the Constitution confers that kind of power on the president, that is a different thing. You can question it. But to say that the exercise of that discretion is unconstitutional, for me, is very difficult to appreciate the basis of that kind of argument.
Very well. The 296 says where in the Constitution, in this Constitution, or in any other law, discretionary power is vested in any person or authority. And we agree that the provision of 14610, as you know, it's been captured, says the president may, in case of the Chief Justice acting in accordance with the advice of the Council of State, suspend or by warrant suspend her. The inclusion of the may where there is or connotes discretion. And I think the argument of the GBA is that once the president is not a judge or a judicial officer, that exercise of discretion could be abused. That is why he needs a regulation or a CI to guide the process so that we all know that exercise of discretion will be fair and candid and not tainted with dislike, etc.
I once again disagree. But I've made this strong argument that really, first of all, even the Supreme Court has said in several cases that when it comes to executive powers, discretionary powers, of the executive, cannot be regulated. I think there is the most recent ones were made by decisions coincidentally were by the very members of the MPP who went to the Supreme Court on this same subject, and the Supreme Court made these pronouncements on it. But that's not my argument. I would want to even move on from the Supreme Court's position on this matter and argue that the exercise of discretionary, in fact, my first question is, this same exercise of discretionary powers have been exercised several times by the president, by the CJ himself, and by several other authorities without any regulations. Why didn't we question them? Why is it becoming an issue today?
But you know that if a wrongful act is done in the past... But that is not
to say that if it happened in the past...
Yes. And it was not questioned, it means it should... Exactly the point.
I completely agree. I'm giving the counter arguments for you so that you don't have to... I'm a fair-minded person, very objective when it comes to some of these.
Very well.
My point really remains that... my point really remains that argument will never fly under any circumstances, because so long as we are still in today, and the Constitution provides for this, if you want to question the constitutional basis of it, my point is that it can be a future decision if the Supreme Court would like to argue, if any person feeling so hurt by this, who would like to appear before the Supreme Court and make that argument that the discretionary power is vested in the executive, whether limiting it to this particular provision or all executive discretionary powers, discretionary powers. I'm all for it, but my point is that it cannot affect the decision as being argued for today.
Very well.
Because for today, this is what we have. And we have to work with what we have. And in the future, we can take steps to amend or provide for detailed provisional regulations of executive decision. Because nowhere in the world is executive decision, mainly because they are political, regulated. Then when you start regulating those matters, that govern to someone else other than the person elected as a president.
Very well. Great.
And this has been the time-tested principle of all legal jurisprudence.
Very well. Great. Let me. So just hang in there. Let me come in studio. Prof. Yes, you're welcome once again.
Yeah, thank
you saw the GBA statement. The GBA appears to, have some issue legal with the suspension of the CJ. What's your reading of it?
Okay. Well, I think justice has really dealt very much with it, but much as I would want to put some contribution to it. But it's quite disappointing and a bit appalling coming from the GBA, which is the Ghana Bar Association. We all growing up within the intellectual space, we saw the struggles. There were two pristine institutions or bodies that in turn, if you never really probably...
You add UTAG?
No. Well, UTAG played a critical role. Maybe, yes, to an extent, that's a very fair one because our universities were very active.
Okay, I thought because you were profs.
No, our universities were... not really. Our universities were very active. I don't want anyone accusing me probably of not being a UTAG member. Yeah, so the point is, what I'm just trying to say is that if you look at the struggle, our struggle for independence, our struggle for constitutional rule, our struggle for the rule of law, and our struggle for democracy and the correction of law. Three institutions, as we put it, the UTAG, or the universities, the Ivory Tower played a critical role. GBA was one of them, and NUCS was one of them. To such an extent that people even thought, fair-minded people, well-educated people thought that the GBA was a constitutional arm of government. That's how powerful they were. That's how critical they were. That's how their voice of reason was established in the minds of Ghanaians. But today, what do we see?
What do we see?
Vanilla hot air in what is being perpetrated in this issue. Why? When Charlotte Osei was suspended, she wasn't a member of the GBA, or she has pink blood running in her.
Right? Are you saying that because someone is a member of an association?
No, I'm not saying. But I'm just saying.
Yeah, so she was a Ghanaian. She is a Ghanaian.
Her suspension. She's a Ghanaian to start with. Her suspension took similar trajectory as to what is happening now, and her removal from office. So when that happened, comparatively, I'm making the comparison here because both the CJ or the suspended CJ and Charlotte Osei are long-standing members of the Ghana Bar Association. When the issue of Charlotte Osei occurred, did we hear a cough from the biased GBA? A bias in the context of what is happening in this instance.
Important, but Charlotte Osei was not the CJ.
It's not about being a CJ. I'm saying,
it's an arm of government.
You see, when you're a member of an association, right, your first right you have is your fellow members fighting for you.
Even if what you've done clearly is in the wrong.
So was Charlotte saying the wrong?
I'm just saying, it's a general principle.
No, it's not about being wrong. So here in the case, we have a divided interest, where some are saying it's wrong, some are saying it's right. Similar to what happened in the Charlotte Osei incident. I'm making this comparison because these are very light comparisons. All members of the GBA, all appointed by the president and have been removed from office. And these are all important rules. And as I've always contextualized, Charlotte Osei's role as commissioner or EC, chairperson, right? It's comparable to that in terms of conditions of service and hierarchy to the Court of Appeals judge.
Yeah, but not the CJ.
No, I'm not saying it's a CJ, but this is similar. I'm just giving, it doesn't matter who, right? They've even attempted to impeach presidents before. How about that?
But you see, it
right?
does matter.
So
because
it doesn't.
The role of the CJ
yes.
is huge.
Right.
The CJ.
Oh, and that of the Electoral Commissioner is not huge. The one who determines elections, the fate of the people is not huge.
But the CJ determines a lot of things. The CJ heads an arm of government.
Yes, but it's appointed by a president, and if she's human, and if she does wrong, there's a procedure to which to go, which has been followed duly in her suspension and before the council.
So is it your case that the GBA didn't say anything then?
Did they say something?
If there's any evidence why they are talking today?
No, I'm just contextualizing this for Ghanaians to actually deduce and know the direction of the vanilla hot air, the 44 members of a 500-member over association. It's, you see, let's not even play with it. It's like, look, an amalgamation of students, which is NUCS, right, is appearing consistent, even than the GBA. In my opinion, in matters like this. So, which is why I'm making this comparison.
What would you rather the GBA have done about this? You think the GBA should have kept quiet, or the GBA should have issued
but
a
the
statement
process is in motion. What has the president done wrong?
What should
Nobody is asking for the support of the president.
The GBA were at a conference, and you don't expect the GBA to finish such a conference without having a word.
You see, no. You see, even in dwelling on this issue, the GBA, look, for me, at the time, they even conferred a lifetime, award to a certain president who was at his abyss in the performance of democracy, in performance of galamsey, among other issues. I questioned.
Is it the last?
Yeah, just the last, yes.
No, I think that was because they said he was the first national council member.
It doesn't matter. That's where I began. Even though I've had,
because no president has ever been a council member. And so once you have one, you have to recognize.
Well, that's really up to them. But here we are today. That's exhibiting itself in what they know to do best.
In any case, that's a different administration.
Yeah, in any case, there are several vital issues that border on law. Right? Why? The fight of galamsey, we are only leaving it to politicians.
The GBA made a comment.
Right? No, it's not about making a comment. They should come up fierce as they're coming up for the CJ.
But they've done that. What should they do? They use the pen and they speak. They speak and they use the pen. They have advocacy.
So you look at all of these issues amidst even the appointment of new judges to the Supreme Court, which is laughable.
Which will come to.
All right. So let me land on this GBA issue. So GBA, look, majority of you claim not to have spoken on this issue because you said 44 members passed that resolution and spoke on it. Let's hear from the majority of you before they denigrate a pristine institution that existed. I mean, we're talking about the GBA of the De Rochas, the GBA of the DF Annans. Can we begin to see that again?
The GBAs of the Samokujatos.
Yes. Oh, well, I'm quite wary about Samuel Kujato in his commentary. No, I'm very wary. I don't hide it. I mean, but I get where he comes from, because for someone who refused to leave the board chairship of Commercial Bank.
Bank of Ghana.
It was a commercial bank.
It was the Bank of Ghana.
Was it Bank of Ghana?
Yeah,
okay.
Bank of Ghana.
Well, who refused to leave a board? In such a manner.
No, but he was testing the law. And we have clarity.
And what happened?
So he left eventually. But
yes, so he's testing the law again in this matter in his commentary. Right? So for him, when it comes to commentaries like this, I take them with a pinch of salt. I mean, to be honest, I expect more from him.
Very well.
Given his long-standing years in practice and having taught, especially ethics, within the legal discipline, I expect more from him.
Very well. John, good to have you again. And of course, Prof. John, we have two Johns. This is when you meet Johns discussing politics, you must watch them well, because they may be up to something. So, I mean, John, good to have you again.
Yeah,
how have you been?
Thank you, my brother.
Yes, so I know the MPP is opposed to all of this, but let's start from the GBA. The GBA statement has come up for criticism. People have criticized it, wondering where they were all along. And coming up with this, people have said their position is not really rooted in law, and you don't expect an association of lawyers to come up with views which legally, have issues. What do you make of the statement calling on the president to revoke the suspension because, in their view, it's unconstitutional?
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning to your cherished listeners and viewers. Just to take it from where my brother left off, where he sort of accused the GBA of not tackling the other issues in the country, I just want to remind him, if you look at the full statement, the resolution, there are several of them. In fact, the very first one was Galamsey and destruction of the environment. The GBA was very vociferous about that. They mentioned, and if you just allow me to just quote the part about Galamsey, the GBA said that acknowledging the grave threat that illegal mining activities pose to Ghana's environment, water bodies, farmlands, public health, the Ghana Bar Association unequivocally condemns the ongoing Galamsey activities across the country and calls for immediate, decisive, and sustained action by all arms of government, law enforcement agencies, relevant stakeholders to eradicate the menace. Urges the judiciary to prioritize the expedite hearing of Galamsey-related cases and ensuring that offenders are held accountable in accordance with the law without fear or favor. The GBA went ahead, spoke about the Boko conflict quite extensively, urging the government to get involved, urging peace. Also spoke about the unresolved Ablekuma North parliamentary elections. So the GBA, from the resolution, you cannot tell me that they have left all the other issues. In fact, one of the most important issues in this country, I believe the Boko conflicts and the Galamsey issues have been dealt with. And we should commend the GBA for that. And of course, at such a conference, if you're looking at national issues, once you speak about Boko, once you speak about Galamsey, obviously you have to look at this destruction of the independence of the judiciary. And so the GBA was right in clearly coming in to point out the difficulties they had, especially quoting the Article 296 of the Constitution on the use of discretionary powers. Look, for me, Selorm, and I believe we've spoken about the suspension. I've held press conference on this. We've done a lot regarding this issue. For me, I've maintained that we are just circling around the issues. And then we can talk about the law and then the GB Association of Lawyers. Some people are saying that they grooved when they discussed 296. For me, my point has always been that we as a country, we have now decided that the independence of the judiciary means nothing to us by this act and the staunch defense.
By this act, that's in how?
The act of suspension of the Chief Justice.
Why not? Why so? It's provided for.
And the staunch defense by members of the public, especially our friends in the NDC, we are saying that we really don't care about the independence of the judiciary. Because look, this whole thing, we should know the heart of this is politics. There is nothing legal, you see, about this. You can talk about the Constitution, your Article 146, 1 to 10. It is the politics of it which is at play. And I told you, I remember in one of our discussions, I told you, if you look at the current Council of State as constituted, all of them, the elections that were held across the country, we know who contested, how they manipulated the system to win. All of them, NDC members, my brother.
Manipulated the system?
Oh, of course. But why don't you...
You referenced it as Ashanti region.
Yeah.
No, but that was just one out of many. And even that, we can't say it was manipulated. There was confusion.
You know what happened in the Ashanti region. And look at all of them, all the people who are on the council right now, NDC, either the person is current NDC chairman or NDC former appointee. But that's how it's always been. The only person that we all know, was independent, clearly, from what we are hearing, I don't know how true it is, maybe my brother can confirm, is the former Chief Justice who actually spoke against what happened. At least from what we are hearing, about 30 members said that they were in support of this act by the president. So I am saying that this is a political agenda by the NDC being properly executed. And the question as to whether 146 was properly activated or 296 should have been properly executed. For me, it is neither here nor there. The point is that the respected president, who, for me, I've always maintained that I believe was really a lover of rule of law, has succumbed to the extreme part of his party, those who don't respect the independence of the judiciary, those who have made claims all over that the CJ should be removed, and that after the CJ, they are going after the Electoral Commission. And of course, the chairman of their party said that all the top members of the Electoral Commission, all of them should be removed. This is a political agenda being properly executed, and Ghanaians should be worried because, as you said in your intro, we are setting a very bad precedent, a slippery slope.
I was referencing TUC.
Yes, well, okay.
These are not my words. These are TUC's words.
My brother doesn't want to get involved in all of this, but I can understand. Well, so you're referencing TUC.
Yes.
So TUC is a very important body, okay? You know, May 1 had issue with what is happening to the judiciary. Me, I am worried. See, I've made all the legal argument. We can go back and forth. Let's not forget that this is politics. And it is the politics that is being executed according to the NDC's plan. Mahama had said it during, the president has said it during his campaign, the top echelon of the NDC.
The president said what? The president said they will remove the CJ. The president said that. The president only encouraged pro-NDC.
And said he was going to reset the judiciary.
To be interested
and
in
said
the
he was going to
judiciary.
reset the judiciary. But this is a reset at play. And you know the 7 appointments that we have. I don't know. Have you ever seen 7 straight appointments to the Supreme Court before? Never heard that.
No, but we've seen, I think, I've not seen, we've seen 5.
7, we've never seen 7.
But we've seen 5 and
normally it's a replacement. When people retire, then you replace.
But we'll get into that.
And so this is Mahama, President Mahama executing his political agenda. And for me, by God's grace, we will all be here. In the next 4 years, after 4 years, we will all be here. When power changes hand, we see those who will be consistent. And I can assure you, I'll be consistent. If my government decides to do, I will speak against it. If you become an
attorney general or a deputy attorney general, you will still be consistent.
I will speak against it.
Really?
Speak against Charlotte, say.
Oh, but I think I've made that point.
He has some views.
I never supported that idea. But of course...
But at the time, his voice wasn't loud.
Exactly.
He didn't have a platform. You can only say it in a lecture hall.
In a lecture hall, exactly. So I'll be very consistent.
At least you're on record.
Yes, I think that we need to continue to build our institutions. It's sad. Tomorrow, when this issue happens, and some of us stand to criticize, if they say the next MPP government
you see, John, the issue...
Those who know us will know that we are consistent.
Yeah, the issue with the GBA is the consistency or inconsistency you're talking about. The GBA hasn't proven, at least from what people say, to be consistent. So, for example, in this statement we're talking about, they mentioned Ablekumanov. Where was the GBA when SAL was raging? For 4 years, the GBA, I don't recall, perhaps they did, but I don't recall. But just 4 months, it's bad. Just 4 months, they are talking, all right?
But you yourself mentioned,
consistent.
This is a very different administration. You can criticize the previous administration of the GBA.
Yeah, but it's an institution.
Yeah, it's an institution, yeah. So this is a very different GBA. And you know, like my brother said earlier on, we've known the GBA to be very active. I mean, years.
But I think there was a resolution that they will not be talking every time.
Yes.
And
but
so they were muted.
Issues.
Yes, only they were muted. You know. Of course, I can understand the importance of the CJ suspension or removal,
but that's
because that's at the core of the judiciary, and the GBA does, members do practice before judges, and lawyers are a key part of that system. So I can understand. But let's look at the concerns they have raised. They're saying that it is unconstitutional. Why is it unconstitutional? This is the Constitution. We see the president following the steps one by one or one after the other. Why would the GBA say that it's unconstitutional? That's what is baffling many people, simply because they say that the use of discretion was not regulated by a CI or by a statutory instrument.
But they've given you the explanation. I don't know.
Yes.
Unless you say that the explanation doesn't make sense, because we know as lawyers that discretionary powers okay, as our constitution says, must always be regulated. What the president did was an exercise of discretionary power. And so if you exercise
but you see, the law says
if
that
you exercise discretionary power without regulation, then you are violating the 296. That's all they are saying.
But that's not accurate. So, for example, we know about Ransford France case and a few other cases.
Yes.
Dateba in that matter said that it was a literal interpretation of the constitution, which could lead to a nuclear meltdown of the state if every discretionary act of the president is to be regulated by a public CI. Then the president will not do anything because, no public officer will do anything because on daily basis they exercise discretion.
No.
The GBA ought to have done this.
That's quite different. I mean, when a particular constitutional duty is imposed on you, and in that same provision, okay, that exercise of that discretionary power is supposed to be regulated. You cannot compare that to the president's everyday decision. Of course, the president is supposed to make critical decisions every day, in terms of our security and all. Those ones really and truly cannot be regulated by a CI at every point in time. But where specifically, when it comes to the removal of a CJ, and these provisions have made that you may suspend the person or not, that is an exercise of discretionary power.
But in the case of the Ransford France case, the EC, I mean, the matter was an EC-related one. And the fact that, I mean, I think it was about demarcation of constituencies, etc., redemarcation of constituencies. That is a constitutional duty that the EC had to carry out. But that was the matter that birthed this particular dictum by Dateba. So, for example, I have it here.
Yes.
If we could put it on the screen, it's such an expansive literal translation.
Would be exercised by who?
No, by the public officer.
By the public officer.
Yes.
Okay,
You know, would lead to grave mischief. It would lead to a nuclear meltdown, so to speak, of government, as we have known it since 1969. It would be thoroughly impractical for public officials and agencies in general to publish regulations governing their discretions before they could exercise them on pain of the invalidity of those discretionary decisions. Literally, thousands of decisions already taken by public officials and agencies since 1969 would have been rendered invalid and would have been declared so by this court.
But that will not take retroactive effect. If you make a decision today, that will not take retroactive effect.
The point they're making is that it is impractical to call for a thing like that. The fact that, I mean, so every decision imposed upon the president.
That's a vast provision. But you see, is it the case? Would you say then that when it comes to exercise of discretionary power, we should avoid the regulation? Would that be an argument to make?
No, but at least we are bound by this.
But I'm saying, but 296 is also there. The 296 is part of our laws, isn't it? So we cannot make a case that now maybe 296 should not be enforced, and that when it comes to exercise of discretionary power,
there's been argument there's the argument that this is usually required, only required when it comes to adjudicating bodies.
Well.
And what the president did, the president
was exercising judicial.
Not necessarily, but the president is not an adjudicating body.
No, but adjudicating bodies.
But suspending somebody.
When you're exercising a judicial power, when you're exercising a judicial power, that's why we are required to do this. Okay? Now, suspend the Chief Justice is a judicial power. You're exercising judicial power. When you suspend the Chief Justice, you are suspending the judicial, you are executing, or you are exercising the judicial power, and that ought to be regulated.
Okay. So Judge Abdullah should take note. I want your view on that. Let me speak, Dr. John Osaikopo. Yes, you've seen the GBA, you've seen governance issues come up, etc. We have discussed this matter before and all of that. The suspension, I'm not sure, came to you as a surprise because we've discussed this and what the possible outcomes of those processes could be, and we saw the suspension. We're seeing the establishment of the committee that will do its work, etc. But what in the GBA statement jumped out to you? People have mentioned consistency, etc. The call that this is unconstitutional, the president should revoke it, etc. What's your thinking around all this?
Thank you very much. Good morning to you. Good morning to John and Prof. Good morning to your listeners as well. I think for me, what jumped at me again was the issue of the president's action being unconstitutional. Because I was I was trying to understand what makes what the president has done unconstitutional. I mean, we may disagree with the path that this thing is going. We may disagree on whether 146 should have been triggered or not. But, I mean, so far, the process as we are going through is a reflection of how the Constitution has designed the process to play out. I'm happy that you projected the decision from the court, because the other thing that I kept asking in relation to this whole exercise of administrative discretion, and I asked about that this morning on a previous show, is how practical is it for a president or any public official with discretionary authority at every exercise of that discretion to ensure that it is governed by some regulation, right? And so when you read the case that you just read, it just seems like what the justice was saying is that it may be impractical. The question then is, when do we pick and choose those cases where it is practical to come up with those regulations? Because it looks like what the court resolved was to say, okay, yes, you do need some regulations, but it cannot be every time. But it did not resolve, this is my layman's understanding, but it also didn't resolve when you get to exercise that discretion of when you exercise that discretion. Right? So like in this case, right? So I have discretion as president. I can exercise that discretion. That discretion has to be, quote unquote, governed by regulation. But when do I get to exercise that discretion when it comes to specifics? Is it when I'm deciding whether the CJ should be suspended or not? Or is that call for regulation on some other issue? And that is where there's still that lack of, clarity. I would want to believe that in as much as I have my own issues with that entire 146, you have an inbuilt process where even in the exercise of that discretion, the president had to consult another body, right? I think it's one of the safety checks built into this process. So, I mean, if you trust that people on the Council of State would appeal to their better angels in advising the president, then you would want to believe that even in the exercise of that discretion, it wasn't just like a whim that says, I woke up today and I feel like suspending the CJ, that I did it in accordance, on the advice of the Council of State. So that for me is the part of the GBA statement in terms of the unconstitutionality of the president's action, and tying that to discretion and how that makes or doesn't make that action constitutional.
I see. Great. I mean, spot on it. My colleague Andrew Appiah, or my friend Andrew Appiah, Dankwa Esquire, Movement for Change, paralegal practitioner, is joining us. We're just looking at the GBA statement and all of that. You are a member of the GBA. I don't know whether you were part of that media conference, were you?
I was not, and I think your reception is true. 44. I was not. And I think to 44 people. I think 44.
Yes, it's about 44 people. 44 people.
About 0.1%.
Yeah, of the total population of people. But you were not there, and they were there, so they took a decision.
Also, no.
See, the three of you, can you confirm you're part of the 44?
No, I wasn't there. I don't know about John. Because Jansan realized he wasn't there. Now, everybody said they were not there.
The conference actually.
No, it happened. Yes, of course.
No one is. So the GBA doesn't have a quorum. No.
So that's another discussion.
Because it is preposterous. It's preposterous and very dangerous for 0.1% of a group to go and take a decision and then say that it's all of our decision. It's not. I'm not part of that decision.
Obviously, you disagree with it.
I agree with. You see, they came out with an earlier statement, which I felt
was neutral, was okay.
Perfect. It's not about the neutrality. I think a call to abide by the rule of law is not a matter of. That's all of our hope. That we fashion a politics or a political culture that guarantees us the rule of law. The call for transparency is one that I agree with. In fact, I was on Prof and I said that unfortunately he wasn't there. That stood on all fours with your position. That for this process to be legitimate, for this process to be one that can fight against the perception of people on thin hands manipulating things, then it needs to be transparent. I agree with that. But you see, whether without going into the merits or not of what they are saying, I think it is preposterous. My brother here agrees with me. I know he agrees with me. It is preposterous for 0.1%. For 0.1%. To go and take a decision and then think that we will be bound.
Special members.
We will be bound. We will all be bound by it. And also, when it comes to the issue of discretion, and I think I must appreciate you for at least making the position of the France case clear. But beyond that, personally, I even want to ask, and that's my personal opinion, whether or not the president even has the discretion on Article 14610. Because as in, can the president say after, let's say, where the Council of State have advised him to say that I won't abide? Because that's 14610.
And the thing actually says in accordance. In accordance.
It is maybe because the president shall not.
Yes.
It's not.
So let me read that. It said, where a petition has been referred to a committee under this article, the president may, in case of the Chief Justice, acting in accordance with the advice of the Council of State, by warrant signed by him, suspend the Chief Justice.
Exactly, because it is made because they can decide to suspend or not to suspend. And that's why the may is necessary. It's not like they are being bound to suspend or they are being bound not to suspend. So it is, and that's why the may is there. But then they say in accordance. The president simply does not have any discretion. That's and that's
what the Council of State chooses is what he has to
If the Council of State says that listen, suspend, the president can't say that I won't suspend. You understand? He has to necessarily abide by what the Council of State says. So where does the issue of discretion come here? As I was all these 296 debates, the president doesn't have any discretion. The Constitution is saying that if the let's be blunt, you understand? Because you see, I was listening to the show, and I agree with my brother John to the extent that we are over politicizing the issues here. I agree, but they did it in earlier times, and so the problem they are facing is that nobody trusts them. Nobody trusts them people as it stands now when they take certain position. Because I know John Pesa, he's a very good friend of mine. And I confirm that in the Shadow Tosei case, he didn't support the position. Except that he just said...
he didn't have a voice.
He just said his view. Oh, he said he had a voice.
No, I mean, his voice was
in the lecture. He was in the lecture rooms and
that's the biggest voice to have.
In the lecture rooms. I know. So, personally, John personally, in my opinion, humble opinion, it will be unfair on John to say that, to make the argument that we always make against the people, that why did you, because I know personally that he didn't support the action of the as in true suspension, because he opened up a Pandora's box. Yeah. He opened up a very dangerous Pandora's box. Because for all intents and purposes, where can you fault his excellency in terms of the procedure? Even in terms of the substance, he's not the one going to make the decision. In terms of the substance, because you know there are two issues. The procedure. The procedure is when it comes to do this. In terms of the substance of whether or not, what's it called? If there's a misstated misconduct that will necessitate a removal, whether there's incompetence or whether that one is not the president. That one is the 5-body committee going to undertake that. Yes. And we all hope that, in the light of what the one force is, because you see, when you read the various instances where the Constitution is holding holders of the various political arms accountable. Because contrary to what my MPP brothers are saying, friends are saying, an act to attempt to remove the CJ is not an attack on the judiciary. It is not. If there's anything, it really, in fact, it rather affirms the one of the abiding accountability, which is an abiding principle of this Constitution. And so it is very disingenuous.
No, but you agree that if we have not officially seen the petitions, we've seen some things on social media. But if the petition, the allegations are frivolous and they do not hold water, and based on those, we want to remove the CJ, and especially, as he said, and as many have said, and as we've heard, people in the ruling party, even in opposition, made certain comments which the GBS alluded to. That is enough grounds for us to be concerned.
And that's why I said what Prophet is saying, I stand on all forces with him. Because what if there's anything that this process calls for is for reform? Because the only reason why people can make allegations is because of the opacity, the opaque nature of the process. If it was transparent, we all see, we all know then that one, how can you make an argument? Only because steps are being taken to remove the CJ in line with the principle of probity and accountability, which is one of the abiding principles of this constitution. Yeah, you understand? Because it is the constitution is saying that the CJ can be removed. So it's not like somebody sitting somewhere and saying that I'm going to remove the CJ. The constitution that 146 is saying that the CJ can be removed, except that it should not be removed, except for stated misconduct, for incompetence, and you understand. So it is very disingenuous, just on the face, because a process which, for all intents and purposes, has not breached the procedural limitations for you to say that it represents an attack on the CJ. Then you yourself, you are playing politics. Then people themselves are playing politics with this very serious issue. You understand? And
they are vanguards of the constitution. They are against the maneuverings.
So because and there were no vanguards.
The so-called maneuverings.
And that vanguard
the attempts to remove the CJ.
What attempts?
There are petitions, there are processes.
No, unless of course we are saying the Council of State is useless. And I want to correct my brother's point of view on that. You see, the Council of State is a composition. And as Doc,
there were issues with some of the elections.
No. Issues. We said one of the elections, Ashanti rating. We can talk about that differently, out of the majority. And as he said, the Council of State is a check, it's a sieve to our democratic process. Now, within that body of the sieve that checks our democratic process are institutional representation. We have, from the armed forces, you have a former CDS sitting on the Council of State. This was the man who was defending the country by land, sea and air. We have the judiciary. Then you have a former Chief Justice. You have the police, a former IGP. All these people were safeguarding this country, including a representation from the same judiciary, who is a former Chief Justice. So we are saying all these people are stupid to have rubber-stamped a process that is going through the fluidity of a constitution. What are we talking about? That's why I keep saying that, look, let's not behave in this country as though pink or green blood runs in certain people and some people have red blood.
Very well.
Why?
I'll go to justice, but your colleagues are having issues with you on my your colleague and roommate, you know what I'm talking about. Your colleague in parliament as well. It's a good one in Selorm. Our beleaguered CJ sometime in November 2023 suspended and eventually expelled a Jessican sitting judge on grounds of stated misconduct. This was triggered by a petition brought against the judge. Find out from my roommate, Honorable John Darko, which law backed her decision, first to suspend and second to expel him as a judge. The MPP and the GBA are clutching at straws and blowing hot air for what's been triggered. For what's been triggered is a time-tested procedure provided in no other law but the Constitution. So what then makes it non-constitutional? A law is not law because it is deemed bad. A law is law because it is the law that must be followed. You can trust the High Court to bring in some jurisprudence every now and then. The law is long settled that when a law provides a procedure under law for a thing to be done, it is only that procedure that must be followed. See the case of Boyfield versus NTAC. But I just hold your thoughts on that. Let me go to Justice Abdullahi. All right, so Justice Abdullahi, there was a question I threw at you earlier on the Justice France, on the France matter, and the point John Darko raised about the president in suspending the CJ, exercising judicial power or authority, which had to be checked because he himself is not a judicial officer or is not a judge. So that is his view on why he thinks it's important to have a regulation guide the process of the suspension of the CJ. What do you think?
Yeah, sorry. I disagree with my brother John on this issue that the suspension is a judicial power. I do not think that is a judicial power. I think that it only becomes a judicial power in this particular case if it was exercised during if the committee had exercised it, then it becomes judicial. But if the president is exercising this at this point, I see it more as administrative or executive decision, and that cannot be a subject of a regulation. That is my simplest opinion on that.
I see. So the other point that the GBA raised also is in respect of making the proceedings public or making the advice or consultation with the Council of State public. That's in furtherance of transparency. How does that sit, vis-a-vis the law?
I advocate for the same position. Enhance our democracy. But are we urging the committee to exercise an unconstitutional mandate? Or we are asking the committee to do what the Constitution says? Because the Constitution says that it must be held in camera. And so until, like I keep saying, until we take active steps to amend and indeed provide for these roadmaps going forward, this is what we have. This is what the Constitution provides. Against or otherwise, I do not see how we can act unconstitutionally simply to appease some people who may feel that something unfair or unlawful would happen during the process. But of course, I agree, like everybody else, that these matters shouldn't be in private, as if we are witches trying to figure out which of our nephews to use for the next gens. You cannot act unconstitutionally. Simply to satisfy each other. As I keep saying, let's provide for a more robust, a more comprehensive removal processes, not just for the CJ, actually, because we have similar challenges with almost all Article 71 public holders, apart from the ministers, who can easily be removed and attend constitutional votes. Appointment and removal is the best way we can consolidate our democracy.
Very well. Let me take John quickly on this. So the issue about the issue that the Pemoko raised, that the CJ did a similar thing. Which process was he following? The president also used. What procedure did the president also use in dismissing the Professor Azai's petition against the same CJ? That was exercise of some discretion as well, and all of that. So deal with that for me, and added to that will be the making of the prima facie process public. What the GBA calling for? The law has said that all of the things should be in camera. Is the GBA now asking that we sidestep the Constitution and do it as they please?
No, I think on that particular point, I disagree with the GBA. I believe that the constitutional provision on that doesn't leave any room for interpretation. And that if it's supposed to be in camera, it is what it is. But like you all have said, I think we've gotten to a point where, as a country, we believe that such processes should be transparent enough for all of us to see exactly what is happening. So I don't think that is important right now where we are. What I will advocate for is the whole suspension to be reversed. But of course, you will tell me that, well, the horse has already left the stable, so we should let that happen. For me, my worry is the way we seem to enjoy, like I said, the destruction of the independence of the judiciary. I don't know when Ghanaians got here, but it's worrisome for me, and I hope that our country will not continue at this path, even when the next government comes. And that even when we don't even change our constitution, the next government, when faced with similar situation, will not repeat what is going on. Look, I agree, as my roommate and my brother said, that the Chief Justice actually suspended and actually dismissed a judge. The Chief Justice has that power. And I also agree with Andy here that there is a constitutional provision for dismissal of Chief Justice. It's in the Constitution, right? Black and white. In fact, that is the whole idea of separation of powers and checks and balances, that the executive will check the judiciary will check both the executive, their acts. They can declare their acts unconstitutional and all of that. and then Parliament also has a way of checking the judiciary and the executive, either through appropriation or even the approval of the members to the Supreme Court and then the president appointee. So there's that circle. My worry is that there's a reason why since 1992, Article 146 has never been invoked. Not that no CJ, okay, or the
in respect of the CJ.
In respect of the CJ, there's a reason why no president has activated that. It's not because they are all saints. And you agree with me, GBA and Aban case, clearly, that was before he became a judge. Before, if he was so minded, could have brought this case back, find a way to, before you even became judge, these were the things people were saying about you, I want you removed. He allowed the man to serve his term, and subsequent to that, all CJs have served their terms. And it is not because they've always been saints. Presidents have not been impeached, not because they've always been saints. Neither have we had the speakers always acting above board.
Because it will be a fruitless endeavor, because the process is tight.
Okay. And I'm saying that maybe nobody has even initiated that because of all of that. For me, and I'm saying this from my heart, we need to be very careful the way, and when I hear some people like my brother defending this, I get worried.
Brothers, Andy.
This particular brother of mine. This particular brother of mine, knowing him, so I get worried, and I think that we need to be very careful. The Bible says that, even though we have the right to do a lot of things, but
not everything is beneficial. No, everything is permissible.
It's beneficial. And so when we sit here and say, isn't the Constitution we do it? And look, I believe that our party has been there before where we defended everything. How did it end us? And so it's sometimes just interesting. It's just circle. And the end is they've said several times that, we are not coming to power until 2050, 2060. I say, okay. At least you didn't say we would never. You gave us 2060. We will come back after 2060. Now, when we come back, do you expect us to also act in fidelity to the law? We need to move above the partisan nature. We need to.
Very well. So talking about partisan nature, now yes. I dovetail it into the next leg of this same discussion.
Yes.
Your party on Monday is leading other political parties to demonstrate. People think that you're rather politicizing the process. It's not good for the CJ. MPP, is it because it was your government that appointed her? What really are you doing? It's rather destroying her case, people have said.
Well, I mean, I don't know how that destroys her case. Because me, I've always maintained, and I think, Selorm, I've told you this, I've never been here to defend the CJ. I'm not defending the CJ. I am defending the judiciary and the independence of it. So it's never been about the CJ. I feel that, and especially for lawyers, I'm wondering at this point, the Supreme Court judges, how they are going to act, because now you are afraid that, once this has been triggered before, if you give judgment, which in your case you believe is the right thing to do because you are doing according to the law and facts, but if it's going to offend the Oga in the Jubilee House, your act is going to be on the line.
Is it in reference to their judicial, exercise of their judicial power? No, a lot of it is mainly administrative.
No, he's been part of it. Why? Didn't you have a guy, one petition says that he went to court and the CJ, who was part of a 5-member court, actually sent him to jail for disrespecting the court. There's one person like that.
But we don't know whether the decisions were based on those ones. So I'm sure they will receive them.
But at least there's one such petition, all right? So I'm saying that people...
The authenticity of that really out there, because these are information from the grapevine.
Yes.
So if we don't speak into it, wouldn't really help.
You
are defending the judiciary, so you do that objectively.
and
not from grapevine, and based on facts. That's the best way to defend it.
Not on guessing. So we are here, unless I say that you haven't seen this particular petition.
We've seen stuff, but we don't know whether it's true or not.
The one we've all seen, but which we cannot authenticate.
And so don't make arguments based on those ones.
So we see, So judges are going to be afraid, and I'm sorry that we're going to get to that point where judges now will be making a decision before that they'll have to call the Jubilee House. Okay, this is my decision. Should I bring it out? We don't have to get there. Judges should be bold and fearless. We don't need timorous souls, okay? Yes, of course, we need bold spirit on the bench. And they can only be bold, they can only act according to their conscience when they know that no Oga is sitting at the top and that they are the all. And that is why so the president said, for instance, that the judiciary is the only arm of the government that doesn't go for election.
That's a fact.
Yes. So he said that, trying to say that the judiciary has more or less has become powerful, and that the executive members go for election, the legislature go for election, so they go for renewal, and that is only the judiciary that doesn't go for election. And so he's worried about their power. But that is how it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be independent, their tenure should be secured, so that when they are giving judgment, they will not look the left or the right, and that they only do the right thing. And now, that is, in my view, being taken away by reason of what is going on. And you're going to have a situation where judgments from our court are only going to satisfy Oga in the Jubilee House. We don't need that. And so for me, what the NPP is doing on Monday, is it 5th May? 5th May. Is a protest against the destruction of the independence of our judiciary. It is not in defense of Toko. That is not what
the other side of it is that others will say that it is in federance of accountability. So it really depends on where you stand. You say it's a distraction of the independence of the judiciary. Others will say accountability is part of our democracy. So it's in federance of that. So, so the difficulty is, so Tokonu comes. Is it because Tokonu was appointed by perhaps your government or your president? That's why all these defenses come. It was just an opportunity to galvanize. To galvanize, shake your base.
I don't think so. I mean, it's not because Tokonu. I don't think so. Tokonu is the head of the judiciary. She could have been appointed by anybody, and will do the same thing.
And people say, just to bring in Charlotte Osei a bit, I know your position on that, but Charlotte Osei was happening. Very critical role, delicate role, easy. She got done, no MPP never said anything, and it went to you even happy, and it happened. So you, all of a sudden, organizing demonstration on this, is hypocritical. It exposes
I think the point that the judiciary is an arm of government should be drummed home well for people to understand that even though they are similar, they are quite different. The issue of Charlotte and this one, this is
so Charlotte could have been treated or could be treated like that.
No. But I won't say that. But I'm saying that we also need to look at the fact that this is an arm of government. This is the 3 arms of government. This is one of them. The Charlotte one is quite different in that regard. And so I think that we could all be angry, but in this particular case, we could be angrier. You understand?
Let me take Dr. Osai's view, or Kapon's view on this. You think the MPP, demonstrating together with some other political parties politicizes the process? Do you think so?
Well, I think the demonstration for me is the one additional act or the last step that also adds the partisan dimension to this issue. Because you know very well that right from the beginning, once this issue came up, you could see generally the split along partisan lines in terms of, who is defending, supporting the process that has been triggered, and who is also arguing on the side of, like caution, this shouldn't be done, all of that. So the demo on Monday or May 5th, for me, is not what begins to politicize this. This has been, already politicized by the partisans. If you look at some of the comments, on social media, in other conversations. I mean, the part where I agree with John is his concern that, you hope that when this process is done, that it doesn't produce a chilling effect on people on the court. The thing with independent constitutional bodies that we cannot also refrain from not making a part of this conversation is that independence and protecting their independence does not also mean unaccountable, right? The Constitution recognizes that. That is why even after it gives independent constitutional bodies all of these safeguards, it also makes provisions for how we hold them accountable, etc., etc. So that is the reason why, for me, as we move ahead, whatever changes we make to this constitutional provision, transparency becomes very key. Because if I am a justice of the Supreme Court, I won't be worried if I know that the sanction that was applied to the Chief Justice was not because, as a member of a 5-member panel or a 7-member panel, someone disagreed with the ruling of the court and therefore they were removed, right? I mean, but if the transparency allows me to see that there were some major infractions, egregious enough with respect to the law, then that shouldn't have a chilling effect on me. It only says to me that I should make sure that when I'm in office,
you do it right.
I do the right thing and I don't break the law. That is why ultimately, if we ever get to the point of rethinking 146, that we introduce a lot more transparency in that, because then it would address that concern of, a justice becoming so afraid that now they can't even render an honest opinion on a legal case before them.
Prof, yes, the MPP joining the process.
Well, I mean, they
have a democratic right to do so.
It is, which, I mean, years before, just in few months past, I'm sure, police officers would have been released, or people have even gone to the same courts to gag them from demonstrating. But thankfully, no one is going to gag them. They would go out and exercise their constitutional rights and mandate, which tells you that there's a new president in town and a new attorney general in town who respects the rule of law and respects the people. So if we are talking about building stronger institutions, right, a dilution of such acts is a reflection of the partisanship we are talking about. This is a process that has been triggered. Nothing untoward on the part of the president, nor the part of the Council of State. We are going step by step, a tick box exercise in the very constitution that has been governing us since 1992. Right. To the extent that even per the conventions of the law that has been abided by the president, who is the acting Chief Justice? It says that the most senior should be. Did the president sidestep him and appoint someone else to be? No. He still went by that same. Who appointed Justice Bafuboni? Kufuor. So it tells you that it is the process has never been partisan on the part of the president. He is invariably exercising a constitutional mandate. And the Constitution says, do A, I'm doing A. Do B, I'm doing B. Listen to the Council of State on what they say. And that's why, where I agree with Doc, that there are ceilings and there are checks and balances within the Constitution. There are safeguards within the Constitution. Right? It is not that the president wakes up in the morning and says, look, the CJ must go. Something triggered the process. The Constitution said it must be in camera. Even the Charles Osei issue, the snippets of information that we had, which we cannot, were more frivolous than what we are seeing today. Talking about logos, among other issues.
Procurement issues.
We don't know the issues they use.
Yeah, procurement is great.
But in this country, what I'm talking about...
So now we can rely on some of these...
No, where I'm coming to... No, I'm not making a case. That's what I'm saying. We cannot authenticate. I still made that point. But you see, we had reached a point in this country where I say we had a very dangerous apex court. We had a very dangerous apex court in the sense, in the outlook of what was being presented to Ghanaians and the interpretation to which we gave. Never in the history of this country have we labeled the apex court of the land unanimous.
But that's your characterization.
Right? Decision by who?
No, it was
right?
the member who called them.
No, but that was your characterization as opposition.
It is not our characterization as opposition. This has been filtering in from well-meaning Ghanaians, not our characterization. This was the outlook of Ghanaians. In any case, where the predictions not coming to pass.
No, but if indeed it's unanimous, what should they do?
No, but in a jurisdiction, in a jurisdiction where social media was guessing decisions of an apex court in how unanimous they would go on very interesting and important public interest cases, it was problematic. And it presents a dangerous bench as far as I am concerned, and the building of our nascent democracy is concerned. And this is why we need to start to look at all of these issues.
I see. Great.
Right? So if they are going to demonstrate fair, as I said, we're going to allow them. The police will help them. I'm sure the AG or his deputy might even pass by to ensure that their rights and responsibilities are upheld, as we did in the case of the just ended demonstration.
Which one?
The one led by
The
Akatachi.
Galamsey one.
The Galamsey one.
Oh, that was a demonstration.
Yes. You see?
Yes, Okatachi.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay,
You see, you are surprised
They
because
were in front of the Flagstaff House. They showed videos on large screens, etc.
right. But in years past, hot water was sprayed on people trying to exercise their democratic rights. Police officers were unleashed on them.
The movement for change is not part of that. You guys issued a statement supporting the process. PPP and I think yourselves support the ongoing process, what the president has initiated.
Exactly, because in fact, it reinforces or consolidates our quest to guarantee for ourselves the rule of law. You understand? And personally, I don't have any qualms with the MPP deciding to go and demonstrate, except that contrary to what they are telling us, you see, their demonstration is not because they believe in the rule of law, or it's not because they are fighting for the rule of law. They are doing politics. You see, it's like we have been hooked to a soap opera. You understand? And is they are unleashing, you understand, this very toxic soap opera. Because you see, let's go on the point of principle. Contrary to what my very good friend John Dakon is saying, he was saying that the president has taken. No, it's not. What has the president done? It's the citizens of Ghana who have petitioned the president, and the president has just followed the shall. Say shall. And he's just followed the shall. In fact, their decision to demonstrate, I feel that's two things. It exposes their fidelity to principle, and two, it presents them as being anti the rule of law. Because the Constitution, one of the abiding principles is that Ghana, our Constitution, should be guided by the principle of probity and accountability. So they're saying they're against this expression, this demonstration of our faithfulness, of our fidelity to the principle of probity and accountability. Is that what they're saying? Yeah, because what is happening is that citizens of this country, based on the strength of our Constitution, have gathered the courage to, on the basis of the principles of probity and accountability, have petitioned for the removal of the Chief Justice under the Constitution. So if you are demonstrating against that, what you are demonstrating against a demonstration of the principle of accountability. That's what they are doing. You understand? And that was for me, it just exposes the MPP for who they truly are. It was last year, in the end of last year, there were a lot of demonstrations of their lack of commitment, or in fact, of they being a threat to the rule of law. The MPP, they are a threat to the rule of law. And the case in point is how the arguments they made during the parliamentary saga, that their party, whose constitution ought to follow the principles, the abiding principles of Ghana. And one of the abiding principles of this country is a respect for the rule of law, a desire by Ghanaians to create a political culture that will guarantee for us a rule of law. So when they made arguments, that listen, in spite of the clear provisions of their constitution, that says that if you contest against a candidate their party have presented, then automatically you leave their party. Did you not hear the arguments that in spite of those provisions, in spite of how they've handled it in the past, their National Council reserves the right, arbitrary, to decide how they handle it? Is arbitrary not one of the abominations of the rule of law? Arbitrariness. Yeah, understand. And so for the MPP to decide to demonstrate, where thankfully, due to the huge strides we've made as a people over the generation, 32 years of the life of this constitution, citizens of this country have the courage to petition against the CJ. It's not that they are, as in we agree with them or not, but the fact that people have gathered the courage to petition for the removal of the CJ in accordance with the clear terms of the constitution. If you are demonstrating, then what you are demonstrating against is against the abiding principles of our constitution, and that's the worry. See, their only commitment probably is to galvanize their very weak base now. And their parties under serious, serious destruction. They did themselves. They sat down. They were allowed. My own brother John is part. Probably I was also part, because in between 2009 and 2016, when serious evils were being done, the party was sat down. We couldn't talk. Yeah, I understand. And so right now, the MPP, as we know them, is not the MPP that we knew and fell in love with. And they are demonstrating their lack of respect and commitment to the rule of law by this demonstration, John. So go and show the whole country that, listen, we don't believe in the rule of law. We don't believe in the constitution. We don't believe in the principle of probity and accountability.
Very well. Just Abdullah, I'll give you 1 minute on this.
On which particular one, please?
On the MPP organizing a demonstration against the suspension of the CJ. Just 1 minute.
Well, anyway, yeah, for the issue of demonstration, Selorm, I would have these possibly words of caution that it's a constitutional allowance given all of us as citizens of this republic to demonstrate on issues that we are against or even in favor. And these constitutional guarantees are part of the expressions of democracy. They are part of the expressions of rule of law. And indeed, they help advance all these principles of accountability that we are all advancing at this point. Unfortunately, when it comes to if you would remember, we can ignore the days of Jerry Rawlings because it was the military regime. But if you start from the recent years, I remember Gabi Asarachudako was literally lynched during a demonstration. Members of your colleagues, your profession, the media, have come under several attacks because they're covering demonstrations within this republic, not outside of this country. When we moved on to the era of the former president, Adonoo, matters only got worse. Where demonstrators were, thinking that considering what Gabi had gone through somewhere, I think 2014 and 2015, being part of the demonstration, and this Adonoo came into office, would have had a better protection for demonstrators in this country, but it rather got worse. The experiences of the past couldn't guide us to protect demonstrators and indeed to guide how demonstrations are organized and in this country. And so my position is that when the same MPP now going back onto the street, we should remember the experiences of the past, so that they be guided to not to destroy public property, not to attempt to do anything that is untoward. And my advice to the state is that we cannot afford to beat people up simply because they demonstrate against a particular decision of the government or the otherwise. We need to protect them. We need to whip in line those who attempt to go beyond the limit set. It is not your right to destroy differently in a different context. But in this particular case, your right to demonstrate should be limited within those rights and not to destroy or causing all of us a lot of resources to replace and indeed buy other assets that are destroyed along. Simply because one person wants to demonstrate against a particular decision or the other. And so for the demonstration, those who want to demonstrate a year long should be allowed to demonstrate a year long if that's what brings them the joy they desire, and if that's the only thing that will also bring the changes that they bring for. But the state must be cautious in also this.
Very well.
We cannot afford.
Very well. Great. All right. Great. So thanks, Justice. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll briefly look at the issue of the 7 justices nominated to the Supreme Court, and we'll deal with the matters of the New Patriotic Party Thank you, Tor, and matters are rising. This is the big issue, 97.3 City FM, and we'll bring you your messages that you've sent to us on our WhatsApp line 020-444-7033. Don't go away.
Kwame Asariobeng, popularly known as A+, joins Selorm Adonoo and Anatufo Boatin on the Upside Down Show this Sunday.
I need you to be brutally honest with us, as candid as you can be. Why did you become an MP? Was it to show somebody, say, yeah, some can say, but me to a day?
If I want, I will be.
Yeah,
that is part of it. And listen, guys, all of you watching me, don't spend too much time arguing about what others can't achieve.
Isn't it interesting how people in the entertainment space are making it up the political ladder?
Don't let people take you too serious. They'll fight you.
Yeah.
So when I was campaigning, I'll go and campaign, I'll rush to UTV, I'll come and fight small UTV. The next day they'll be on social media fighting, I'll be in the village campaigning. Before they saw I was MP. Of course. Yeah, they should see us as concert. We will show them.
Accompanying him is DJ Abeku. And a poet, Joel King Speaks.
Because like labels, I was tagged the cripple, and my friend a dumb man also part of the clan of disables.
Join us this Sunday at 7 p.m. prompt for the Upside Down Show, only on Channel 1 TV.
Where politics meets power, where the tough questions are asked, welcome to Face to Face. Every Tuesday at 9 p.m., join Umaru Amadou as he takes you face to face with the key players shaping the future of our nation.
I lost over $10 million at the trade fair.
You had a fight with the management of trade fair?
I don't have a fight with them. I just deplore the way they went about what they did.
Let's talk about the chief prosecutor of the state at the time that you were being prosecuted, Godfrey Adame, the Attorney General.
Yes. I think he was directed to jail us.
By who?
By the system.
Boko has been a failure for your government, though.
Can't be a failure.
You have not solved it.
No, you are not praising them, the previous government for solving Yendi, which was even a more difficult case.
It's quite obvious that from these votes, the people felt that let's just let you go.
So they were disappointed in
us.
You are essentially the worst government in the Fourth Republic.
I don't know how you are doing that. If you based on the indicators.
Yes, based on the number of people who refuse to come and vote for you.
If that is your analysis, then why not?
No filter, no boundaries, just the truth behind the headlines. Deep, bold, and unflinching. Face to Face with Umaru Amadou airs on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. only on Channel 1 TV, where politics gets real.
You're welcome back. This is the big issue. I picked one message from Chris in Ashalibo. He says, I'm not surprised. A few members of the GB are in the media space crying and roaring like hungry lions looking for their prey to devour. Anytime the MPP is in power, these same fellows would put on a silent mode, and immediately the MPP is out of power, then they become the righteous ones who got the divine right to tell us what is right and what's wrong. So, when some indigenous banks needed 9 billion to survive, the MPP regime deemed it fit to rather invest 58 million in an internationally recognized hall called the Cathedral. It's Charlotte said, not a member of the GBA, Chris from Ashalibutu. Now, yes, we'll read other messages, just keep them coming in. The president, over the week, nominated 7 persons for the Supreme Court, very eminent persons for the Supreme Court, and these persons include members of the bench that people have, asked over the years to be nominated to the court of the Apex Court. The list is on the screen. Justice Dennis Ajay, Justice Simon Subari, Justice Senu Jamefe, Justice Kweku Tewia Akabuafo, Justice Philip Bride-Mensah, Justice Janapari Battles Kojo, Justice Hafisa Ta Amalebuba. These are justices of appeal. They've been at it for a while. You know, we know some of them, and so yeah, they've been nominated. The letter from the Acting Chief Justice to the Judicial Council reads that pursuant to Article 1442 of the Constitution of Ghana 1992, His Excellency the President has nominated the following Justice of Appeal to be considered for appointment to the Supreme Court. So the Judicial Council will have to do its work, and you know, we'll see how it goes. Parliament will eventually vet them for the Apex Court. I start off with you, Prof. We in the past shouted that the President Akufo-Addo was packing the courts. You know, we needed an upper ceiling, etc. But here we are with 7 more justices on their way to the Supreme Court. Where is the argument that we are packing the courts and the upper ceiling and all of that? 7 more. Now we'll bring a number to 19 or 20.
Well, I mean, in my own personal opinion, I label the President's appointment of these noble judges or justices to the Supreme Court as a balancing act of our Apex Court.
Balancing act?
Yes. And I'll explain that.
Okay.
Wow.
So, and I'll give, I mean, we tested a DEX. And if you do a DEX, a quick DEX research of appointments that I've made in time past, and juxtaposing with the very people that have been appointed. Now, I just want to take you through a quick one, right? Starting from the enactment of the 1992 Constitution. You had Rawles's people, where he started from 1993 all the way through 1995 to 2000, right? This is a period from 1993 to 2000. He appointed 10 justices of the Supreme Court. Okay? Then Kufuor took over. Between 2000 to 2008, he appointed 17 justices of the Supreme Court. We're just doing a content analysis of the appointments that have been made by previous presidents to the Apex Court. Now you take, very interesting coming up here. After Kufuor 17, compared to Rawlings has been the longest serving president, even as a Democratic president. He appointed 10. Let's take
but that was within the Democratic.
That's within the Democratic limit. I'm not saying that. Let me flow.
That was within the Democratic.
I'm not saying no.
Never interrupted. But when you say that within the Democratic Party, he's the longest.
So that's 8. Kufuor did 8.
Yes. So I'm just saying. Yeah, he did 8. So I'm just coming to that, right? Okay. So that's why I say within the 1992 Constitution. But I'm just so. Then you have 17. Okay.
For Kufuor.
For Kufuor. Mills did 3.
For a 4-year period.
For a 4-year period. Interesting, right? Mahama did 4.
For a 4-year period.
For a 4-year period. Right. And this was a president who did 4. If he had any interest in packing the Supreme Court, that was his very opportunity to do that. He didn't do it. He appointed only 4. So there is something invariably informing him for the sanctity of the bench and the balancing act that I'll be coming to, that has been engaged in, that is reflecting in the eminent 7 that has been appointed. Now, post that, we had Nana Akufo-Addo. And how many did he do? 15.
For an 8-year period.
For an 8-year period. Now, this 7 that President Mahama has done, plus his 4, would even give us how many? Granted that he's not 11. Going to appoint any.
That's
till
11.
He ends. That's still 11.
But you can't say for a fact that he may not appoint.
No, I'm just saying, granted, right? But there's a reason. Because I made a fundamental point that he wouldn't, probably, when he had the chance to do it in his first tenure, he appointed only 4. He could have gone 7, he could have gone 5, but he did 4 for a reason. And that's respect of the Constitution and respect for the conventions of it. Right. And interestingly, you'd find that Chief Justice George Nawu was appointed by Kufuor. When President Mahama came in, was there any petition to remove him? Was there any petition to remove her? She stayed in, on to the role. Right. Interestingly, you move to another chief, Eni Yeboah, who also became Chief Justice.
Was that also for Akufu before?
Yes, yes, Akufu before that. Who was appointed? So, I think some of her elevations were done by Rawlings.
So Akufu was appointed by Rawlings.
By Rawlings. Yes. right? So
that's
you see,
CJ
shaped by, yes, and that's interesting. So you look at even the current composition of the bench. Poman was one of President Mohammed's appointment, who I think is very excellent when you read his
only one left.
Yeah, when you read his judgments and his the attitude he exudes. Come on, let me the attitude he exudes on the bench, the grace. Let me put it that way. Right, it's admirable. Then you come to the appointments of these eminent justices. You look at Justice Ajay, right? He was appointed to the Court of Appeal in 2012. If you run the mathematics, he did 13 years on the Court of Appeal. You move to Justice Subari, 15 years Court of Appeal, right? Justice Emefe, 15 years Court of Appeal. That's a lot of years to do. So if President Mahama has come in and he's even about to do elevations and decide to look at these people, justices, who in their own rights have distinguished themselves on the bench and have been overlooked severally, it's worthy of commendation than any other. And I would say that's what has even probably informed President Mahama to reach the 7 that he's got into. Right? But I call it.
Plus his old 4 makes it 11.
No, I'm not even talking about his old 4. I'm talking about the older 7. Right? Those that have done 13 and 15 years. Amongst the 7 that has been appointed. Right? Because, I mean, we all know that they could take someone straight from practice who's distinguished himself to the apex court. Or you go through the chain or the command system all the way to the Court of Appeal, then to the apex court. And for me, this is motivational enough. Right? And what he's telling them is that you've been overlooked over the years, the works you've done over the years have been recognized by me as president. And I deem it important that you serve.
It was actually Justice Dennis J was actually appointed to the Court of Appeal bench in 2010.
Yes, I put 2010. Okay, well,
so
yes,
that even makes a point.
That still makes my point. Yeah, for 15. Which still gives 15. I mean, Court of Appeal, 15 years, and we all know what Sir Dennis has done, even in legal education, how he distinguished himself. So if President Mahama is doing this, I don't see or view this as packing the courts. But I said the balancing act.
It's a matter of numbers.
No, it's a matter of numbers, but there's no ceiling. So if there's no ceiling,
which you criticized yesterday.
Yeah, no, we criticized it for what it was, right?
Which was,
and we are calling for a balancing act here. And
balancing act means what? That because a certain former president.
No, not because a certain former president. In my view of balancing act, hopefully, we may not be seeing the unanimous.
So you're saying that these people belong to a certain political persuasion or
ideology?
Saying
political, no, but
and
I
so
gave
those
you,
who were appointed by the previous system,
don't put words in my mouth.
Had a certain political persuasion, and so you are balancing.
No, but if you look at some of these justices who were appointed, they were not, like, their trajectory had nothing to do with politics. I gave you years of sitting in the Court of Appeal, 15 years. That's not motivational. How many years? You even calculate their years today. How long would Sir Dennis sit? If there was any intention or ill intention, right, he would have gone for the likes of Dr. Rena, Justice Ramsay, who are younger people, to pack them there. I'm saying if there was any intention, right? Yeah. Or Professor Remo Atubiga, who have years ahead of them, right, to do a certain bidding. But this tells you that he's responding to people that have been overlooked within the system. This could be a positive interpretation that we should be giving it rather than what we are trying to do here.
I see.
Right? So for me, I think this is worthy of commendation. Right? It safeguards our constitution. It gives eminence. Again, it may restore. That's my hope, which I call the Balancing Act. It may restore confidence in the apex court, which I labeled a dangerous apex. At the time, we're seeing all these unanimous
people like Professor Zah, have made a point about, the fact that there's infrastructural, there's lack of infrastructure even for them, office spaces and all of that, the cost on the taxpayer, etc. Have we thought about that? 7 more.
Oh, but
now they have to go up. Which offices are they going to?
Who cleared their bungalows for
the office, not bungalow.
No, but bungalows are part of infrastructure.
No,
a judge ought to be comfortable
yeah,
enough.
No problem. But I'm talking about offices. Right? Which office would they be?
Right.
Build new offices?
I said, who cleared their bungalows? And in the land that the bungalows were cleared.
The state did.
Yes, and in the land that the bungalows were cleared, there are office spaces that could have been used.
No, that's not the Supreme Court.
No, I'm not talking about Supreme Court. There were opportunities that could have been used for other stuff. In that respect of infrastructure. But today, what has it become for us? But I'm not justifying it whatsoever. We've created new regions. When we created them, did they have administrative offices? Today, are the ministers not sitting in them? Would they not require courts? It's an evolving democracy, right? It is a society. The fact that there's no airport in a region does not mean that an airport will not go there. Feasibility study shows that it should go there.
Very well.
So infrastructure is neither here nor there. So it is now incumbent on the state to provide that infrastructure to meet the appointments of these justices.
Very well. Andrew, 7 justices, just very briefly. 7 justices.
For me, to add this, for me, if I had my way,
you should appoint more.
Yeah, and the more should have been those that were ignored. Very good justices that forcefully went into either retirement or got tired. One of them is Justice Jan, who was at the Court of Appeal.
No, he went because of the cathedral matters.
Yes, but I am. Yes, sir, that's what I'm saying. That if it's permissible,
you should call him from retirement.
He should call them from retirement and elevate them.
I see, Andrew. 7 more. We complained in the past. And all of that. Where do you stand?
As in clearly, it's not good for the state. As in clearly, and I'm glad my brother here has been very honest, brutally honest, because clearly I think. His Excellency John Mahama does not trust the composition of the judiciary as it stands now in terms of their lenience.
Do you yourself trust it?
It's not whether I trust
them.
He's an officer of the court. It's not whether I trust them or not. And clearly, and that's what I mean by you have been brutally honest. Because clearly, you may want to balance, but I don't think it's good for the state. And for me, it saddens my heart that very excellent judges, Sedenis, Akabuafo, and the like, have to be appointed to the Supreme Court under such circumstance. I think clearly this calls for reforms, as in we've been calling for constitutional reforms, and we must do something about this. We were making, and you see, for me, beyond the reforms. Also, in terms of how the judiciary themselves also have handled themselves. Because J.J. Rollins, I think, appointed justice even way beyond 92. As in way beyond 90. So, and then in how the judiciary managed themselves. Nobody, we didn't have doubt as to where their leanings were. Because in the famous MPP cases, where the MPP won all those cases, and rightly so. The decisions were made by justices who really were appointed by J.J. Rollins. I think over the past few years, and I think Kanapa himself said it, as in how can it be that almost on all decisions, all the judges have a certain position? It really didn't help us in terms of the optics of it, and it really affected the how the public saw the judiciary. But and so clear, and that's what I mean by you have been brutally honest.
Oh yeah, I'm honest.
You have been brutally honest. The motivation clearly is to balance that, and I think that as part of the reforms, there's a need for us to put a ceiling. Because we can't have this business of MPP will come and do this number, and this will come, and even the thought that because a judge has been appointed by, let's say, a president sponsored by a certain party, that judge leans towards is even a problem. We need to deal with and that's why I'm making reference to how justices in the 90s handled it. All those judges were appointed by J.J. Rollins, and yet in most of the constitutional cases that went before them, they didn't rule per.
Is it not the degenerating politics
exactly.
we're seeing that is creating?
Excellent.
Because Sofa Akufo, Tuguba, Acha, all these guys who we hold in high esteem were appointed by Rollins, and they did the job as they had to do.
In fact, fantastic.
Sometimes ruling against Rollins, the 31st December case and all of that.
But you have taken, our politics is degenerating. Bodies are meant to be independent, increasingly being perceived to be partisan, and it's dangerous. And that's why I feel that the reforms, the constitutional reforms we are calling for, as in that reset, will not be done or will not be successful unless we manage to reset all these perceptions and the degenerating of our politics.
But Andy, there's the argument which was canvassed by Justice Tokon, who suspended CJ. One of the matters around her neck was that she proposed to the president to appoint or nominate some 5 persons to the Supreme Court. In her defense of that, she altered a justification for that to the president, where she said that the workload on the justices currently was huge. And so the concluding or the completion rate of cases per year was reducing, and that it needed more hands to do. So, for example, in 2019-2020, 75% of the cases were concluded. 2020-2021, 77%. That reduced to 44, and then 37. The cases were growing, and so we need more hands and more brains to sit to deal with that. That was why she suggested to the president to nominate 5 persons to the Supreme Court. Clearly, based on the numbers, maybe the noble persons on the bench at the Supreme Court are not enough to deal with the matters expeditiously and bring judgment to people. So the numbers may be justified only even on the numbers. What do you say to that?
No. So, but the problem she's facing, and I think His Excellency John Mahama will face the same issue. It's not about the numbers. It's about the perception of the people. You understand? Because our politicians have lost sight of the fact that the powers they are using are powers. You understand? And so it is also their responsibility to deal with the perception business. Unfortunately, in spite of what the numbers are saying, the people didn't believe her. One, because of their failure to deal with the perception, because she herself failed to follow due process at that time. And so then it was very easy to advance an argument that she's just pushing those numbers as part of the grand agenda to pack the Supreme Court. Fortunately, I think His Excellency John Mahama is being, I think, honest, that doesn't pay what you are saying. Because clearly the focus is to balance the Supreme Court. So
the political views on the Supreme Court.
Political views. To balance it, and then we can have a full restart.
No, but balance what? Balance what in terms of...
And for me, this is why I'm coming to.
Balance on gender.
No, not gender. If we get it balanced, right? If we get it balanced, then we can have a conversation to say, look, you are even talking about capping. I don't know why we are...
Balance in terms of what? Is it gender, regional...
Hold on a second, right? The perception out there about our apex court. It's not
the perception out there is that the court is
MPP. It's MPP, regardless of what it is. Now, these people are appointed, as I did indicate, even when in invoking the balancing. I told you, some of them have stayed on the bench 15, 13 years. Why? It said, who knows the membership of Sir Dennis? Does he hold an NDC or an MPP card? Nobody knows.
But I don't think so.
But when Roma Tubiga conducted his research, Professor Roma Tubiga conducted his research on the 14 pattern of judges that were appointed, the current the CJ at the time poo-pooed on it and called it an American kind of research. So why didn't we engage in it prudently to inform our constitutional reforms? In any case, let me conclude on that. In any case, look, I believe, and John will agree with me, to even go into a constitutional review, we chose a moderate to be the chair of the Constitutional Review Committee, who stems from the institution, CDD, Professor A. Krempe. If we're at it, at gagging anyone or trying to put an NDC agenda, we wouldn't be even going for that course. Now, you'd also realize when I say balancing act, now if we get it balanced, it's the start of the process. If we get it balanced, which I'll explain.
What balance?
But the perception is there. So now if we bring these eminent judges on, the perception may be diluted for the positive. To say that, okay, well, these justices have joined.
An NDC view.
No. They are bringing a balanced view that may dilute what the public think it is. Now, if we reach that stage of saturation,
the balance is
no, come on. Yeah, you are not interpreting the balance right.
So tell us.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
That it dilutes the public perception that this is MPP.
Because the balance.
But who is saying they are NDC? They are only being appointed by the
people there currently are MPP.
No, but that's a perception which you agree.
No, but that's a perception to that. This book.
So now, So now, when we get that saturation, which is a process, when we get that saturation of a balance, we can sit on the drawing board and say, okay.
So the balance is not gender. The balance is not regional.
No, it encompasses all of these. All of these ingredients are part of the balance. No, I'm not saying bias.
Political balance.
No, don't put words in my mouth. So once we get that, why are we fixated on capping the numbers? The fixation should not be capping the numbers. The fixation should be the independent nature of the process through which, so we could have an independent body moving forward to say that when someone qualifies, meets criteria A, B, C, D, there is a set judicial committee, right, that takes that person or promotes that person.
But there's a judicial council.
No, but that is not his mandate to do that.
No, it does that.
No, but who?
It has to look at it.
Yes, it has to look at it. But now there's an appointing authority in the person of the president, which we are questioning its independence, as you are saying.
You allow the so-called.
No, you are telling me that if he appoints people there, it means that they are NDC people.
I've not said
that.
No,
that's what you.
The two of you. Nobody has said that. You said balance. And we are questioning the balance.
Yes, the
balance, gender or regional. That's what
I say. Regional. Right, really? Gender, okay, then it dilutes the perception that the bench is tinted.
Okay, great.
That is what the balance
let me bring it just
that's why I say
you have a last one.
It's a very dangerous interpretation where we're looking at as far as the apex court of the land is concerned. And this has international implications.
Help us understand it. I mean, so the seven appointments. I mean, we said parking the courts in the past, we should cap it. Now this is 7. Nothing. I mean, totally good people. We know them, Justice said. Dennis, we know them. Very, very good people. Akabuafu, Justice Jamepe, great people. Talk to me about the timing and our discussions in the past about the numbers on the bench, the idea about capping, etc. And of course, Justice, not Justice Professor Azer's concern that this is a further drain on the taxpayer and the fact that there's not even infrastructure for them at the Supreme Court.
Thank you so much, Selorm. So this is my position has always been one and the same, that we need more members to the Supreme Court. Right from the days that the Chief Justice wrongly wrote requesting 5 judges to be appointed to the Supreme Court, we still have 2 justices that were in Parliament, and it had one of the finest justices of our country, Justice Benasco. If you remember her, she's probably arguably one of the best female justices, but unfortunately suffered jolt, and so I think she's still at the Court of Appeal. You've rightly pointed out that indeed these justices are not in any form or shape the kind of justices that you can question their integrity and their fidelity to the law. Their appreciation and application of the law is arguably unmatched. But I would want to situate what Prof said. He started his comment by indicating that these are his private views. And so I think that we need to respect it and make it partisan, because I can see my brother trying to NDC issue. I do not know whether the NDC has taken that position. I do not know whether the government has taken that position that they are doing any balancing act. However, once the person indicates that it is his private view, I think we need to respect it from that angle. And it's the government or party decision. Having said that, I think we need to ask ourselves, these legitimate questions that the former CG or the embattled CG asked. Is it the case that we need the numbers? My view is absolute yes. Why? The answers are manifold, but I just stick to maybe 2 or 3. First, we have an unbridled appellate Supreme Court, where literally everything, regardless of the nature of it, come to the Supreme Court. Applications, generally, Court of Appeal, all these, we lump them at the Supreme Court without any overburdening the Supreme Court. Remember, we have a High Court today we can't even count the number of high courts we have. And literally everybody goes to the Supreme Court, over 100 high courts. Everybody rushes to the Supreme Court for decisions on bordering on judicial review. And it is not with any regulation. And this is in addition to all other substantive appeals that goes to the Court of Appeal. Then comes in applications coming from the Court of Appeal, whether they are coming in the form of repeat applications or they are coming in the form of an appeal. All these go. Now, these are exclusive of what the Supreme Court itself does, i.e., interpretations, and they do. Of course, we all know that they already have jurisdictions scattered all over, and so we have an overburdened Supreme Court. And as far as I'm concerned, we may need about 2 or 3 panels sitting at the same time. For me, that is the most helpful way. On the average, you mean you have about 15 judges sitting at that moment. And for me, that is the best way of reducing the backlog. As for the issue of money, I think it is it's non-existent at all. The issue of resources, because really, you cannot, if you can afford, as this was my argument, and my brother John mentions the idea of the principles of consistency, and I have been consistent with my arguments throughout. Argument never changes on any issue. And I say this because I remember making this point that if we could afford over 122 ministers or 21, but I have argued for 25 actually. But let's even stick to what we are currently dealing with, maximum of 20 that we are dealing presently. If we can afford 122 ministers, what is so unique that they become an endangered species, where, particularly when we know that we need them for the work that they need to do. The ministers that we had, the 122 ministers that we had, what did they do that was so unique, that contributed to our democracy, that we still paid their emoluments and democracy? What did they do to contribute to our development? Absolutely nothing. A zero contribution. In fact, what 60 ministers did in previous regimes couldn't even be achieved by the over 122 ministers that we had. The resource constraints are completely flawed on that argument. Of course, there could be, as I said, just 2 or 3, and these are the 2. See, and I always want us to remember other regimes. In other regimes, you cannot simply just walk into the Supreme Court. It doesn't work that way because there are sieving mechanisms that reduces the backlog. But we don't have that kind of system. And so it is prudent, as far as I'm concerned, that we have the number of judges, at least 15 of them sitting at the same time, so that we can have the remaining 10 or others also on standby. Because at every point in time, some of them get sick, some of them travel, some of them get engaged in other matters that make it impossible for them to sit. And so you need these extra 10 or more to come in.
Great.
And the other question, my last issue on this subject, are we in any way saying that these 7 judges do not qualify? Is that part of the argument that we are making?
No, that hasn't come up.
If the answer is yes, I think we just once single argue, absolutely not. That's the whole point. So if they are overqualified, then what is the question about promoting them? What's the issue? Where lies in the, or is it because they were, that's administration? Is that the issue? Because I do not think that the timing is an issue at all. I do not think that the issue of balancing or not balancing is an issue at all. I do not think that the removal of the CJ or otherwise is an issue at all, because it's the same CJ that requested for 5 anyway. If you request for 5 and you are getting 7, Should that be an issue? Clearly not.
Buy 5,
so
get 2
honestly,
free.
I think we are being hypocritical.
Great. All right, Justice. All right.
Anyone who questions the numbers is being purely hypocritical.
Very well.
And we should note that person for that.
All right, great. John Darko, Honorable Counsel for Minority Caucus. Yeah, so I mean, 7 justices.
Is that an invention or it has always existed?
No, it's a new. I think it's a new system.
It's a federal cabinet.
Well, I don't know. But what is important is an MP and his legal counsel.
Yeah, which is a big rule. So I just wanted to know maybe.
And he wears a big shoe as well.
I know. Yeah, it's very important constituency.
All right, so the 7 appoint. I mean, I'm not sure anybody is raising an issue about their competence yet. But people have raised. Some of your people have raised issues about the timing, the packing of the courts, etc. What was the argument really?
But I think let me look at the timing just briefly, and maybe just oppose that with what Prof started saying earlier on. You know, when President Rawlings, he actually appointed 11, not 10.
Okay.
11.
Well, I'll still take that.
Yes.
Even 12, I'll take.
Yes. And President Kufuor, appointed his first Supreme Court judge in March 2022.
March 2022.
2002, sorry. March 2002. 2 years after he came into power. President Kufuor, his first appointment to the Supreme Court was Afre, and then Georgina Wood and Badu in 2002.
Which two were brought for the Chachu case?
Yes, that's Afre.
And
yes, Afre, 2002, and Georgina Wood.
No, Afre and somebody.
Afre, Georgina Wood.
Georgina Wood came in 2000. March and November.
Afre March, and Georgina Wood
November.
Yes, Afre was March. So it took President Kufuor 2 years to appoint his first Supreme Court judge, Nana Akufo-Addo. His first Supreme Court appointment came in October 2018. Again, more than 3 years after he came into office, or close to 2 years after he came into office. So let's not pretend as if the time.
By the October, he did 5.
Oh,
no, wait.
So let's not.
So you see, when you say President Kufuor worked with the Rawlings appointed Supreme Court judges for 2 years before he nominated 1 in March, and then I think 2 in November, and then Nana Akufo-Addo in October 2018, or was it November? October 2018, also appointed I think 4. In fact, 1, 2, 3, 4, not 5.
But the needs of the times are different. Yes, there's a president, Akufo-Addo, who appointed 2 sometime in August or November.
Yes.
Then the 2
and then
so
really and truly, what is the argument now? Is it the case that we don't have a lot of the Supreme Court judges to handle the cases, or we want to just balance, do the balancing act, ensure that, in his opinion, the current members are NPP, and so he's bringing NDC members.
He didn't say
I didn't say NDC.
He didn't say NPP. He left the balance. He left the balance in there.
We understood.
He left it to our imagination.
Because he said that this kind of Supreme Court, in his initial submission, said they were tagged as unanimous, and then President Mahama called them.
But unanimous FC doesn't mean NPP, does it?
It doesn't mean NPP.
Okay, so what are you balancing?
Right?
Well,
we're balancing public perception and opinion.
So you can balance public perception, really?
No,
but it's part of the governance process. It's democracy. Because it's democracy. I mean, you respond to public opinion.
Great.
And that's an important.
So the public wants you to appoint.
No, you're making an interesting point on the timing and all of that. Right. So yes.
So I'm saying that the timing really matters. And I mean, look, I know most of the judges, and in fact, I can say that some of them have tweeted me. Okay. Yeah. And so I respect the work they do. But I think that we need to be very careful. This is 3 months into a government. You remove a sitting Supreme Court judge and appoint 7.
It's not been removed. It's been suspended.
Okay. You suspend a sitting Supreme Court judge and appoint 3 months into administration, appoint 7 Supreme Court judges, and we think it's okay. What it means, and from what my brother said, this president doesn't think that he can work with these Supreme Court judges.
I didn't say
the
that.
way President Kufuor worked with the sitting Supreme Court judges for 2 years before he appointed 1. Nana Akufo-Addo, one of the Supreme Court judges he inherited for 2 years before he appointed 4. Now you, 3 months, you appoint 7 Supreme Court judges.
And before the appointment, what was the voting pattern of those judges?
Oh, so there's a voting pattern, you know.
Yes, that's what they say.
I'm not running away from that.
So they vote for
unanimous. That's what they have said.
Unanimous excuse. I'm not running away from unanimous excuse.
No, not party
what
issues.
you're talking about.
Not party
the issues as a pattern.
So how do they vote?
Oh, they're unanimous.
Oh,
on decisions.
No, why are you pretending? You're intellectuals. You cannot say something and only cite one example.
You cannot say it's a pattern. I said social media was predicting the bench.
Oh, look at
and that is problematic.
So social media is where you're going to do your
politics.
No, I
said they were. Oh, what? So social media is not part of our
politics. Is that what you're going to do your politics?
You don't have a social media page. You don't appeal to that.
So the president is appointing 7 Supreme Court judges because social media.
Oh no, don't go that way. That's not what your interpretation. Look, we are speaking to the same documents. Look at it from that context.
John, so your point is that the timing really. What I'm saying to you,
I'm just telling you how low society viewed it.
Another issue to
you are spokesperson to the vice president. Or you work in
no, he works in the office.
You work in the vice president's office.
Yes, as an economic advisor.
Before we leave, he will tell her where she is. But you see,
I see where you're going.
He's on break. He's around.
I think but we need to know with the vice president.
No, but it's a statement.
We need to know what the vice president is.
There was a statement.
Okay, what was the statement?
No, there was. But she's taking a break.
The vice president.
She's taking a break.
The vice president has been ill for so many weeks, going to mass, and we don't know. There's no update, and we don't.
Listen, she's fine. She's fine. She's taking a break. She's resting.
She took a 3 weeks.
Social media. Where you get your information from and see what people are talking about. We're asking you where
I didn't know my comment to hit you so much.
But anyway,
Prof, let it stay on there.
But anyway,
that was a detour.
That's a big one.
Let me say this.
A strategic detour.
I don't know what
it does mean that he can also do the politics. That's why.
A strategic detour.
No, of course, we'll come to that.
Alisa, I'm glad I hit hard.
No, sorry. No, we are running out of time.
So you see, look, the issues, and Justice mentioned that we don't have to cap our Supreme Court. I'm surprised. Look, and he again made an example. We have the U.S. The U.S. Supreme Court received the highest number of applications from all the courts. Okay, of course they have a civil system. They are made of 9 judges. So what we need to do is rather have a system where most cases, okay, will drop at a certain point in time. We have a way to sieve the number of cases that get to the Supreme Court. Because why is Justice suggesting 15? Why not 19 or 18? Why not 25 or 35? Why not 50 then? Because if that is the case, then we can go on and on and on and on, and we have to now say, because we are receiving thousands of cases from all over the country, we need to have 100 Supreme Court judges. And he's asking the Supreme Court judges should sit maybe 2 sets should be sitting at the same time, so that they'll be giving different judgment from the Supreme Court. One panel will give judgment in respect of the same facts.
No, not the same facts. It means if I have a case,
the facts could be very similar as lawyers, you know.
No, but the point I'm making is that if I have a case, he has a case, you have a case. Instead of all of us being the queue, we could have 2. It's called double track. It's called double track.
The facts could be very similar, and they could be giving differing opinions. You don't want that from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court must always speak as one. So I don't agree that the Supreme Court should sit, double
track.
No, we don't have to do that. So that we can have a consistent judgment coming from the Supreme Court. So I believe that it has to be capped. As to the number, maybe all of us will have to determine. But that will leave a Supreme Court in such a way that any president comes and appoints any number of persons to the Supreme Court. For me, I think it's wrong.
Great. Dr. Sekop, I mean, listening to all of this and all the discussion this morning, it makes the role of the Constitution Review Committee very important. And your colleague, Professor H.K. Prempeh, that's a huge role, a job he has leading. What was your thinking around the Supreme Court justices' appointment, timing, etc.?
And even talking about the constitutional review process itself, right? Part of my worry, though, is if for everything that keeps coming up, we point to the Constitution, which places quite a huge burden on this committee, because they become sort of this, we are expecting you to fix everything that ails the Constitution. It also seems like there's a governance culture where if the thing is not in the Constitution, then it doesn't carry enough weight, right? But then if it is also in the Constitution, but it's
look at the wording
and everything. You know, with the appointment of the justices, right? I mean, one of the reasons why I agree with those who call for a cap, right, is not that if the administrative burden of managing cases is one too many and therefore we cannot have additional justices. I just worry that our culture around the use of discretion seems to say that so long as the rules doesn't say I cannot do it, it means I can and I would, right? We tend to have this very expansive view of how one exercises discretion. So I'm not saying we would ever get there, but who is to say that someday you would not have, you know, because it's just the minimum, I can always go above and there's no limit to, you know, how many I want to put, you know, on the court. So that for me is sometimes my worry, and why I would agree that if you can cap it, it cures that potential mischief of the issue we've been talking about, which is a day would come where somebody really wants to park the court. Nothing stops them.
It's happening now. The balance.
Nothing. But you see, there's right. But the other thing that I want to add quickly, though, is that see this whole idea of balancing the court. I just hope that, I mean, my worry with the way Prof is framing it is, what are we really balancing, right? And are we now saying that if the 7 is bringing a balance, whatever the balance is, that now when a panel is being put together to decide a case, we are going to look through the list and say, okay, now we have the ones that were appointed by President Adonoo, we have the ones that have been appointed by President John Mahama, and if it's a 5-member panel, let's balance it 3-2 thing. I just worry about
that's what the National Security Minister.
Oh, I understand that, right? But you see, the thing about
coming from a pure political stand,
right,
right, which I'm not shying away from,
right. But you see, the thing though about predictability of institutions, it is always not a bad thing if an institution is predictable, in the sense that it is one of the things that makes you say, knowing that if I go to this institution,
in fact, the law itself is predictable.
Yes, right, that you are consistent, things like that. So, but again, it's just the politics of how that predictability is now being looked at. Is
the predictability Prof is talking about is when this party takes the matter here, you know the outcome.
Right.
If this other party takes it there, you know that's
right.
the difference.
And again, that's what
the predictability of the law.
Take a matter to court, somebody has actually stolen, and the punishment regime is there. You know that you cannot get less than 7 years.
We are just a court that interprets. Right, and several constitutional issues, and where I agree with you that where in other jurisdictions where conventions actually play the safeguards,
we have to move. So drop. Yes.
So are we then also saying that these justices are incapable of exercising independence in their opinion, in the adjudication of cases?
The ones on the bench or the new ones?
No, the ones on the bench, and that the reason for making sure, quote unquote, there is a balance. Is
that's private view.
That is subject to interpretation.
Okay.
Great.
That is subject to interpretation.
Great.
And what I'm saying
is... So let me take a break. Let me take a break. We take a short break. When I come back, we will now start with John Darko to tell us what is happening on the Thank You Tour. Don't go away.
Kwame Asariobeng, popularly known as A+, joins Selorm Adonoo and Anatufo Boateng on the Upside Down Show this Sunday.
I need you to be brutally honest with us, as candid as you can be. Why did you become an MP? Was it to show somebody, say, yeah, some can say, but me to a day.
If I want, I will be
here.
That is part of it. And listen, guys, all of you watching me, don't spend too much time arguing about what others can't achieve.
Isn't it interesting how people in the entertainment space are making it up the political ladder?
Don't let people take you too serious. They'll fight you. So when I was campaigning, I'll go and campaign. I'll rush to UTV. I'll come and fight small UTV. The next day they'll be on social media fighting. I'll be in the village campaigning. Before they saw I was MP.
Of course.
Yeah, they should see us as concert. We will show them.
Accompanying him is DJ Abeko. And a poet, Joel King speaks.
Because like labels, I was tagged the cripple, and my friend a dumb man also part of the clan of disables.
Join us this Sunday at 7 p.m. prompt for the Upside Down Show, only on Channel 1 TV.
Welcome. It's Play to Aid.
Get ready for the game show where every play has a purpose. Welcome to Play to Aid, the only game show where your knowledge and skill don't just win you prizes, they help change lives.
What sport is considered the most popular in the world?
Football. Every point you earn goes toward real-world support, from school supplies to health kits, clean water to emergency relief. Play smart, play big, play to aid. Catch all the action, the drama, and the heat.
Most commonly spoken language in Brazil.
Portuguese. Play to Aid every Sunday at 3:30 p.m. only on Channel 1 TV.
Edna, let's begin.
The Play to Aid game show is proudly sponsored by Tank Palace, Giraffe Island, and VVIP.
Yeah, welcome back. This is a big issue, the final lap of the program. Few of your messages that have come through. This one says, the law all of us have been studying for years. How is it that all are having divergent views upon how a certain process should go or should be followed? Africans will never make their laws and stuff clear so that they will always debate about it. I mean, no name, but that's how law is. Put 2 or 3 lawyers together, you may not have the same view. That's the beauty of it. That's why we have interpretation. This one from Davis, Community 25. Selorm, can you chase those crazy bald heads out of town? Okay. That's, I think it's a reggae song like that. I think Bob Marley, I think. All right. For Prof, the balancing act is the way to go. The court is too sometimes. Okay. Reset the court with the balancing act. The unanimous court must change. I see. This other one says, if the NDC does not trust the judicial system, they should tell we the Ghanaians and stop beating about the bush. It was the same Supreme Court that helped them win the 2012 election case. Well, so, John Akun, I mean, your party, your former candidate, 2024 candidate, Dr. Bawumia, has been going around the country on a thank you tour. The thank you tour is I won't say degenerating, but it's leading to other things. I mean, comments here and there. Obviously, some people are not happy. Some people are bitter. The reasons for their defeat. Dr. Bawumia calls some of them the arrogance of power, economic hardship, and all of that, named the e-levy, and so many things. He even said that they called for reshuffle, but they didn't hear. And all those matters in this culminated in defeat. In fact, I saw a short video yesterday that I said 3 days to election, they increased fuel prices, and he didn't even know about it at some time. 3 days to election, increase fuel price. So did you want us to lose? Or we were losing the election. I mean, so a lot of things have happened, and those things are coming up. Indeed, the party advised everybody to be quiet till the Okwe committee did its work. The Okwe committee presented its report. The party said, don't discuss the matters openly, but we understand the General Secretary himself and Bawumia are the people raising the issues in the committee's report, and that is raising a number of issues. I don't know if it's part of the healing process or it is not going as planned. Kennedy Japan is opted out, citing security concerns and a few other things. Indeed, people have called for persons like Alan Chematin and Afoko and Co. to be brought back to the party. I'll take Andy's view on that, on Alan Chematin rejoining the MPP and all of that. John, is the thank you tour going as well as planned, or you think it could be, redone in a way that will bring out the real thank you essence?
Okay, my brother, thank you. Our party we believe we have a lot of work to do to recapture power. We need to sell our message well to the people of Ghana. In this country right now, members who belong to the majority caucus are accusing each other of corruption and thievery. A+ has called the sitting Attorney General a thief, an old fool whose brain must be checked.
They said he was impersonated.
The Attorney General has also come out to say that the A+ knows something about National Service Scheme and that he should also speak out. These are very serious matters that the people of Ghana must know why members of the majority caucus are accusing each other of corruption and thievery. Our country is bedeviled with destruction of our forests. Galamsey is killing us. These are important issues that we should be looking at. We go to my constituency right now. I was in Sunyane last week. I was in Bono East. Dumso is what is destroyed.
As part of the thank you tour, you followed the team, or you went on your own?
I went there on my own, on parliamentary duty.
Okay.
Dumso is killing us. Again, the thing which is even destroying us right now is the fact that now we are unable to even collect refuse in this country. If you go to the Sunyane and these other places, and here we have a government that, in my view...
Are we still on thank you tour?
I'll come to thank you tour. Thank you tour is very important. But I think that Ghanaians need to understand these issues. Okay? We voted for a government which doesn't care about us anymore. And it's all about their appointees and how much they can get from the people of Ghana. Ghanaians made a big mistake by bringing these people into power. But look, NPP lost the election, and we believe that in all things we need to give thanks to God. And I have gone around as a candidate to go and thank the people who voted for me in Swami. And so it's okay that the vice president who went out there as a flag bearer also goes out there to thank the people of Ghana. I think that he's done that well. Just like any institution, there will be some misunderstanding here and there. But I don't think that that should really bother the people of Ghana. What should bother us right now is the kind of corruption going on in the system where government members of the majority are accusing each other of corruption and thievery. That is what should engage the people of Ghana. What should engage the people of Ghana is the doomso, destroying our appliances at home, destroying businesses of people. Those are the things that should engage the attention of people of Ghana. Dr. Bawumia will bring his thank you tour to an end very soon, and then we will have one Thanksgiving service in the country. We are, as a party, going to study the Profokwe report and make the necessary adjustment. If it's a constitutional amendment, we'll do that. And then also look at why we lost the election to this insensitive government. And then we can become the alternative for the people of Ghana to bring us back into power in 2028.
Great. Prof. Of course, this is not your matter.
I know it's not my matter, but you see, if it has become my matter since he had a detour.
No, you don't make a detour.
I'm not making a detour.
Let's address the plus and
no. I mean, I don't know. To start with, number one, I don't know what kind of corruption he's talking about. I don't know what doomsaw and refuse. But if a government has taken over, right, from a government, a previous government, that Ghanaians put a massive verdict on by giving them a parliamentary allocation of seats in parliament that is unprecedented, then it tells you the kind of government they are. And 5 months into that administration, where a budget was read in March, what it tells you is that whatever you did or superintended over is what has dovetailed into this administration that we are in to clean up. And the good people of Ghana has given us that mandate. But moving forward, very interesting fallouts that the eminent lawyer for the micro minority is refusing to acknowledge. Why I say this? You see, and they are struggling. You'd see all schools of thoughts and people emerging. And for me, the sad thing is that it's already emerging as money politics again. Kennedy Japan jumps in. The first move he makes is to go to Asylum Down, sit party executive and say, look, we've gone into opposition. It's been 3 months. No one is receiving a salary. Here is X amount of money. This is the kind of politics we want to start with. Then you have Dr. Bawumia, who you struggle to sell. You struggle to sell. I speak on this based on facts. In the history of party primaries, internal party primaries, if a candidate is not hitting 90 plus, you're struggling. Where you
because the contenders were strong.
Yeah, where you whip the system in place.
The contenders were strong.
Which, well, if without the butterfly people, I don't know which strong contenders were in.
Strong,
right?
Alan strong from the first round.
Well, if you say so. But all what I'm saying, so you're saying that Professor Joshua Alabi was not strong in the NDC's contest. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying
or
that. But
those who contested President Mahama in the contest were not strong.
But John Mahama was president.
Is that
John
what
Mahama
you're
was
saying?
president.
Right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
John Mahama was president.
Bawumia was vice president.
No, our president and vice are not the same.
Head of the economic management team.
But that doesn't
right? What do you call it? A great inventor of everything successful in that administration. So what are we talking about? A de facto president he was by what they advertised him to be. So if the said de facto president was put on the ballot internally, he couldn't get a 70. They told you that you are going to struggle to sell such a person. Now there are cracks, the likes of Abronya is emerged, right? Borrowing phrases from all sensational party conversations in the past to bring in. Right. You have the likes of the creation of the education minister, who is now rearing his head to test the waters to see his popularity. A former education minister, Educhum, the evangelical Educhum, trying to test the waters to see how things would be like. I don't know if Ejako would want to, but amongst all of them, intellectually, I think he stands very tall.
No, you're choosing candidates.
I'm not choosing, I'm just saying what it is. And the party has been unfair to him because he was a policy chief.
It's a consummate intellectual.
Yeah, but he
Luching himself.
So, consummate in what right?
It's
Central University College?
It's an intellectual.
No, I say Central University College, which
Professor... Former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Ghana. It's an academic, authored books, done a lot of things.
Post-election books, which is fair enough. So, moving on from that, you'd see how they struggle to. And the cracks, I think that...
But is it that you fear Bawumia?
No,
so
we don't
all
fear
the attacks is on him.
No, he was the candidate presented. So if there are cracks anywhere, this is where we have to unpack them. Nobody feared him. He had every right to showcase his mettle because I said he was a de facto president. Because they say digitalization, Bawumia, everything Bawumia, head of economic management team Bawumia, he said he was going to arrest the CD and give the keys to the IGP. Did I say that?
Very well.
So if we are unpacking all of that today on a campaign tour and they are pointing, but you see...
Are you saying the thank you tour is not necessary?
I'm not saying we did thank you tours to
so
galvanize our base, which they are
wrong?
emulating from us, but it's the cracks from it. We didn't have Abronyas, we didn't have Kennedy Japons making, pissing in whilst the process was going. Who withdrew from our campaign tours? We rather had people galvanizing. Bring,
Oh, when? No, that was in government. That was against Mills. When you were
but why are you bringing a Mills matter? No, but why are you bringing a Mills matter? No, but why are you bringing a Mills matter here?
No, I'm not siding with you. I'm not siding with you.
We're talking about contemporary issues. The last 8 years. We're talking about contemporary issues.
Like I said, it's not your matter. So
it's still our matter. It's part of our
let me hear. I need to say a few things for you.
No, I belongs to the butterfly family.
I didn't say a few things for you.
So invariably, what I'm saying is that, well, it's a long time coming. We're still going to see more cracks, I know. But the Okoye report should be explicit on Dome Kwabenya because that's his backyard. So we'd really know what happened.
Great.
In these...
Great. So Andy, you have 2 minutes. Thank you, Tor. I mean, will your boss or former boss go back to the NPP? Are you guys going back to the NPP?
So a simple thank you, Tor. And a student has been stabbed. Somebody is struggling for his dear life on a thank you tour.
But let's separate the thank you talk from the stabbing. The
No,
stabbing.
no. It was a thank you talk, and somebody was stabbed. Yes, you can't segregate. I beg you. Try to talk about A+. I beg you. And for me, it reinforces our position because 2 years ago, the simple issue of election, as in choosing, one of our candidates was beaten to a state where he almost went blind. Now, the stabbing reinforces our position that the MPP has departed so fundamentally from their core values to the extent where I even term them a reprobate party.
A reprobate party?
Yeah. They've departed so fundamentally from the lofty ideals of liberal democracy. A simple thank you to people are being stabbed. Stabbed. MPP, listen, if you go and join them and you don't take care, you'll be stabbed. My brother here was struggling to even talk about thank you to. He rather will talk about A+ because I know John. John, we are very good friends. In fact, he's my contact. Very good friends.
You are disclosing.
Oh, yeah, I'm disclosing.
It's important. It's important.
A fantastic human being. And you see, he's struggling. He's struggling because rather the MPP is just a name. But in terms of the ideals, in terms of the values, in terms of the principles, and Nado has managed to suck all the wonderful spirit and he's invited familiar spirit. And so simple thank you to. People are being stabbed.
Very well.
Yes, so listen, it is a national issue. John, contract water is a national issue because if one of the major political parties that's supposed to be the vanguard of our democratic principles have debates to the extent that you'll be stabbed. If you share a contrary view, you'll be stabbed.
But this is an isolated incident.
No,
it's an isolated incident.
No, it's not.
Students struggling for money.
No, it's not. So listen. Our candidate was beaten to a position where he almost went blind. What's it called? What caused I'll give you a showdown? When you about 2012, when people attack executives in the party office. Listen, what's called? What caused Foucault? Party executives were killed. And now I'm saying the party, I'm now convinced, so in the issue of whether we are coming back or not, the reason why we departed, the reasons why we left the party are even heightened now. They are even more depased than when we left. That's why I'm calling them a reprobate party. Why would you want to, this for place, why would I want to go there? We are not coming.
Very well. Justice, Justice, you have a few seconds just to say a few things on this.
Yes, thank you so much. It's interesting that.
Yes, go ahead.
Please, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I think that it's important. It's important that the MPP engages in the thank you tour. It's a crucial moment to re-engage the electorate after such a massive defeat. The only thing you can do, the best you can do, is to engage the electorate and pick up pieces of information as to what went wrong. In addition to the OK report, I think the candidate is part of the team. There are other contestants in the primaries who are also part of the team. I think before all the team, that cordial relationship and project that semblance of unity and a good party to the Ghanaian. We need to remember that the party has been battered prior to this election, and indeed prior to the previous elections, where they are focused, got involved in all kinds of asset bathing and all of that, and then moving on to the last elections where Butterfly eventually, for the second time or the third time, left during the presidential elections. With all of that, naturally,
there should be some thank you talk.
One would expect that the elections wasn't going to go well, and so the thank you talk for me presents that unique opportunity to present to the people of Ghana that the party is back, they are united, they are ready to pick up the pieces and reform where need be. I think the reform part is very crucial, particularly because President Akufo-Addo had succeeded in creating a different impression of the NPP before the people of Ghana. That's why everybody keeps talking about the NPP we knew. Everyone keeps talking about the same thing. Whether NPP or NDC or any other political party, whoever refers to the NPP refers to it as the NPP that we knew, it's not the NPP of today. Clearly, it tells you that you need to pick up the pieces, reform, do some introspection, and present that kind of NPP that the people of Ghana would buy once again. Because to lose an election with over 2 million votes is unprecedented in the history of the Republic, and it's not something that you can easily wish out. If you just keep Ghanaians. A stronger opposition is very good for our democracy and good governance. So we cannot sit here and wish any political party, whether NPP or NDC or any other political party, worse. We cannot wish these parties to them because party in this country, it is just detrimental to our collective good. And so let's support all the parties, let help them to build and if you feel a particular political party is not good enough, you must necessarily support it even though it is not good enough. That is not the call. My call is that all political parties ought to be supported just so we can have the best of our democracy.
Great. Thanks so much, Sadulai. Dr. Sarkwapong, my producer has given me 5 minutes graciously just because John Darko has to make a comeback. So you have your 2 minutes.
We all share. I
didn't even have to announce it.
We all share in the 5 minutes.
Take your 2 minutes.
So for me, the 2 quick points I want to make is that one, obviously there are some post-election grievances that the party needs to work through. I just hope that sooner rather than later, the party will be able to move from resolving all of these post-election grievances, get to a place where, regardless of who or what contributed to the defeat of the party, that you'd get to a place where you can collectively own the electoral defeat, and then collectively start working towards the next election. Because from the way it is going, and I said this earlier on this morning on another show with Andy, my worry is that if this pattern continues, I worry about how the next party elections, the next election, internal party elections is going to look like, and even further down the line, how the next flag bearership is going to look like. If you let these post-defeat grievances linger for too long,
how do they resolve that? Do they have someone in the party who can call everybody to order? How do they resolve
Surely there has to be some voices, right, that can prevail among all those with all kinds of, grievances to say, look, at the end of the day, what is it that matters most? Do we want to keep dwelling on the things that cause our defeat, or do we want to learn the lessons from it, collectively own the good, the bad, and the ugly, and then move on because we need to prepare ourselves for the next battle ahead? And that, for me, I think there should be voices in the party who can prevail in the midst of even some of the unfortunate incidents that are emerging.
Anas from WASA, the NPP did not really lose the 2024 election. They lost the party itself. How do you use a knife to say thank you? However, your own dog may bite you depending on upbringing. I'm giving you 1 more minute to just...
And I appreciate that. I think what I want to put across is that, look, the NPP as a political party is important for this country. We've served at least together 16 years. There are a lot of good things the party has done. And so my plea is that all of us, all the party members, must come together. This is not a time for us to fight and insult each other. Let's all try as much as possible, and especially leadership. And this is so important because that is what caused some of the problems we've had. Leadership should try as much as possible to stay neutral. And then please, my people, this is not a time for the presidential primaries. This is the time for party building. Let's build our party and then look for a proper time to now engage in the presidential contest. And then I'll ask my brother and all those who form part of the movement for change and the people who have left the party, that look, we are a family. We all had our difficulties. You all left. I know Andy will come back. I love him so much. We love everybody. We need everybody on board. Honestly speaking, the NPP needs all its members. And of course, the people of Ghana, those who are in the middle, those who don't belong to any political party, to join us. Because I believe that this party, the NPP party, when it forms a government, is always better for the people of Ghana. So thank you for the opportunity. And I hope that our people, especially leadership, members of parliament and the leadership, will stay neutral so that we can properly manage the election. So when we do that, I believe that winning the next election will be easier for all of us.
Great. So thanks so much. That's John Daku.
It's to go and make peace with their elders.
Great.
Dr. Nyaho Tamaklo, President Kufuor.
All right.
Go and start from that.
That's John Daku, Member of Parliament for Swami, Minority Caucus Legal Counsel. Andrew Appiah Kubi, Andrew Appiah Dankwa, private legal practitioner and a member of the Movement for Change. He says they are not coming back to the NPP. Justice Abdullahi, private legal practitioner as well. Dr. John Esai Kwapon, political scientist, CDD research fellow. Professor Sharif Khalid Mahmood, economic advisor, office of the vice president. This is how we conclude today's edition of the program. Let me say happy birthday to the Honorable Mohammed Adamu Ramadan, member of parliament for Adenta. And I hear you are having a big one today. This is from your friend Chris Fiawonu. Wish you the very best of the day. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.